Do-do-do. Do-be-do-do-do. Okay, looks like we got audio. Looks like we got visuals. Everything seems alright. Let me just let everybody know that we are live. We are live, we are live, we are live. I'm on, meow. Do-do-do. Yeah. There we go. There we go. That ought to do it. Mr. Smithy. Hello, hello. We'll get started here in a couple of minutes. We're just going to wait for other people to show up and show themselves here. Mr. Juggernuts. Hello, sir. How goes it? How goes it indeed? Just waiting for everybody to get in so we can start the old festivities there. Shut up, dog. That neighbor's dog don't ever shut up. Don't never shut up. Barks all day. How's your son? My son is living. He is alive. He is off in his room doing son things with his online friends via Discord chat or whatever the hell. Getting the Series X soon. Maybe if I get that stimulus money. Yeah, I get that stimulus money. I'll buy a Series X with it. You mark my words on that. Looking good. Well, you know, I didn't do a full shave today. I just trimmed some of this down because I was getting bushy here. And then I trimmed this top part because it was getting so thick it was starting to interfere with my ability to eat food. So I trimmed this down a little bit. I still got some fine tuning to do. But I'm leaving this long just because, you know, just to see how far I can get with it. Although it's starting to annoy me. I may just shave it off here in a little while. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Hello, Ultra Steel. We're almost ready to go. Even though we only got 6 viewers in here. People lately have been taking longer to get in here. I don't know what's delaying them, but dang. Maybe it's because they know that I don't really talk about anything until it hits exactly 6 o'clock. 7th, your choice if you want to shave it. Well, of course it's my choice. I'd like to get it to where it was like coming to a point. You know? Kind of Kerry King from Slayer, that shit. Get it to where it was like... But my beard is naturally curly when it gets to a certain length. This hair is actually longer than it looks. It's just that it curls. It's wavy. And I don't want to get like a hair straightener or some crap. I feel lame as hell. 7th, you ever see that old Game Trailers video on YouTube? I love their Zelda retrospect. I don't know that I've ever watched that channel. I don't know that I have. But anyway, it is Saturday. It is 6 o'clock, March 6th, 2021, and this is the 7thCast. As always, I am your venerable host, your friendly, intelligent, sensitive, empathetic, just your friendly neighborhood 7th. Off in the distance is 8th, doing his 8th thing. Probably on some Discord chat with one of his friends playing, I don't know, Dark Souls 3 or some shit. Whatever the hell. It's always something with that boy. It's always something. He's excited because it's now just 3 weeks away from picking up his new puppy. And he's excited to get her, so she's all excited about. He's all excited about that. I don't know if the dog's excited or not. Probably not. But that'll be a nice hour drive that day. They live on out in the middle of nowhere, like a little over an hour away from here. So we got to go pick her up. She ain't weaned yet. Going to be a few more weeks for that before we can go pick her up. She's half Chihuahua and looks to be got some terrier in her, like a rat terrier or maybe a short-legged Jack Russell. Hard to say. They say she's a Chihuahua, but I look at her and I see Chihuahua traits and I see terrier traits. So, she ain't going to ever get any bigger than maybe 10 pounds at the tops anyway, so it don't matter. She'll probably live to be 20 years old, though. Those little Chihuahua terrier dogs, they live a long time as long as you take care of them. Abby would still be alive today if he hadn't have fallen down the stairs when he was 3. So, against your better judgment, I actually tried to watch The English Patient, and you're absolutely right. It was extremely boring, and I could not finish it. I ended it halfway. Well, I tried to tell you. You lost an hour because you wouldn't listen. When are you going to learn? 7th is always right. And even when I'm wrong for the right reasons. Come on. How the smeg are you? I'm doing all right, you obnoxious git. I'm currently playing Nigeria Automata. Nigeria Automata. I think you meant near. Perhaps you had some autocorrect issues on your phone or computer there, sir. Nigeria Automata. Lord. You got your little robot chasing you around. I will show you the way. Nigeria Automata. 7th, thoughts on Wandavision finale and the show as a whole. I'm about to get into that. Carol, I'm not going to insult you by attempting your last name because I'm horrible with last names. Your opinion on the Cyberpunk 2077 game? I like it pretty much on my used PS4 Pro. I had fun with it. It's not what they advertised it would be. It's missing a ton of stuff that they said would be in the game. But just as a straightforward, open world, first-person action RPG, I had fun with it. And some of the stuff in it is legit funny. And I'm not even talking about the glitches because I played it on PS5 and I didn't, aside from a couple of crashes, I didn't have any problems with it. I didn't have a whole lot. I had a couple of glitches here and there, the usual kind of stuff that you'd see in a Bethesda game, but I didn't feel like I wasted my money. I got 70 or 80 hours into it. I did not plat it. I missed a couple of things that would prevent me from getting the plat without replaying like at least half the game. So I put it down and figured when the PS5 patch eventually someday comes out, I'll just start the whole thing over and pick up the ones that I missed to get the plat. Whatever. The Power of Metal sent me confetti. Thank you, The Power of Metal. Appreciate it. Wow, only 10 viewers. I'm sucking lately. I go from getting 50 and 60 viewers and now I'm getting 10. Is there something special going on today that I need to know about? I don't know. I don't know about all that. So a quick note. I don't remember who it was, okay? So I apologize in advance. Somebody last week on the 7thCast asked me if I had ever had to take a personality test and what the results of my personality test was if I did take one. And I did have to take one for my employer a couple of years ago. and it was that popular one. I can't remember the name of it. Every time I try to think of the name of that personality test, I get it confused with the name of a famous lawnmower manufacturer. I keep calling it the Briggs and Stratton test, but that's not what it is. It's some other industry standard test. HBO, I think, or some other channel has maybe Netflix has a documentary about it, but it was too boring to watch. I lasted 5 minutes. But the results of my personality test was that I was an ENFJ-A. I don't really know what that means other than I'm supposedly like a born leader or some crap. Whatever. But it's ENFJ-A. That's me. And all I remember about it is that my boss at the time got the results, and he was like, "Wow, I had you mispegged from the get-go." And we actually got along after that. It's like his approach to me changed. And at first we were kind of like butting heads a lot. But after he got the results of that personality test, he's like, "That is not what I expected to get at all." And he just kind of changed his approach with me. And I never had any other problems out of that. In fact, for the most part, he kind of left me alone to do my own thing. So, anyway, ENFJA. 7th, do you feel Super Mario Odyssey didn't need to be an open world game? I don't know, but it feels like everything in the world is stretched out just for the sake of it. Feels like a chore. I didn't play it that much. I got to play it for about an hour the day that I got my Switch, and then my Switch disappeared into 8th room, and I haven't been able to play it that much since. So I couldn't really tell you my opinion on that. I mean, the gameplay seemed fine, but yeah, that's just me. I don't get to play Nintendo that much anymore because of 8th. 8th has monopolized the Switch, so I don't get much exposure to it these days. UFC, you think there might be a big UFC fight that's distracting everybody from the 7thCast? Well, I guess that's possible. Hey 7th, how's it going? It's going all right. Why does Walmart suck at restocking the PS5? Probably for the same reason that so many other places suck at it. They're just hard to come by. Has no effect on me one way or the other because we got 2 of them. Video game lover. Hello, sir. Finally got my on-screen chat working again. It wasn't working for a while. Now it's working pretty well, as you can see. As you can see. So, yesterday, I was greatly anticipating getting off work so that I could watch the end of Wandavision and Coming to America, or Coming to America 2, if that makes it easier for you. And, well, I came away pretty disappointed in both. With WandaVision, it really felt like they were gearing up, and I didn't buy in too super heavily to all of the fan theories. I did think at the time when they brought in the actor from the X-Men movies to play Quicksilver, that was maybe their way of getting into the multiverse of madness stuff with Doctor Strange, and that maybe that was how they were going to bring the X-Men in, that the X-Men only existed in an alternate universe and they ended up coming into the universe of the MCU. But that's not the case. That's not the case at all. It was a tease. It was a cock tease. They basically trolled Marvel fans with that one. What I'm talking about is it just had a really generic final boss fight ending. I was expecting something a lot more, as far as just something that would make the story meaningful and build something major towards wherever the MCU is going forward with stage 4 or whatever you want to call it, stage 5, whatever. I don't even know what stage they're on anymore. But there was only two major things that could lead to other storylines. The one thing is that, and of course this is spoilers, Wanda ends up with the Darkhold, which, if you haven't read the comics, the Darkhold is a really massively powerful book of dark spells. It was heavily featured in the Midnight Suns storyline from the mid to late 90s, somewhere around in there. And it involved Ghost Rider and the Night Stalkers, which had Blade and Hannibal King in it, and Spirit of Vengeance, who was a spinoff from Ghost Rider, and then it had its own book that was tied into it too, which had to do with these kind of paranormal investigative type people that are trying to track the Darkhold down, and Zarathos was involved, Mephisto was involved. It was just that Doctor Strange was involved at one point, if I recall. There was just a bunch of different characters that were tied into this book, and the Darkhold had showed up in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but it's clear now that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is no longer considered canon to the MCU. That it's maybe like alternate universe stuff, because the Darkhold was in it, but the cover of the book looked totally different. It actually said Darkhold in this lame Daredevil circa 2002 font. And that storyline ended with Ghost Rider taking the Darkhold back to some dark alternate universe and disappearing with it. And so they're not following that story at all. So it appears that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has been made non-canon, just like Netflix's Marvel shows. So that could lead to a lot of things. That could tie in directly with the Multiverse of Madness, because this book is insanely powerful. It's to the point, like in the comics anyway, of being like Infinity Gauntlet level of power. Stuff that could completely obliterate the universe type stuff. The other thing was they brought White Vision into it, and at the end of it, White Vision is fighting Fake Vision, who is just a manifestation of Vision that Wanda brought to life, that's powered by part of the Soul Stone, or Mind Stone, or whichever stone she has, that's trapped inside herself. And they get into a fight, and Fake Vision implants all of his memories, which he has all of Vision's actual memories, implants them in White Vision, who White Vision is the reanimated corpse of the real Vision. And so then White Vision remembers who he is, but of course he doesn't have the stone in him anymore, so he's still not complete. And he says, "I am Vision," and then he flies away, and that's the last time you see him. So I'm assuming that is going to factor in to other things as well. But I mean, it just ended with a big, CGI boss battle in the clouds between Wanda and Agatha Harkness or whatever, who was actually her mentor in the comics, not her enemy. So they kind of went in a different direction with Agatha there. But there just could have been a whole lot more to it. Certainly the storyline that it's based upon led to much bigger things, like the fact that her two twin sons eventually did become actual living beings. And so it was kind of disappointing. Yeah, it was still a fun show. I enjoyed the show. I just think they kind of half-assed the ending a little bit there. what's her name? I can't remember her name now. The little girl from the daughter of Captain Marvel's best friend in the Captain Marvel movie that's all grown up. She has powers now. Somehow. Escaping from the reality bubble or whatever that Wanda had encapsulated the town in. Yeah, Monica Rambeau, and then going back into it somehow activated powers in her. So now she basically has the powers of that she did in the comics when she was called Photon, which is basically she has the power to control different light spectrums, and she can make her own body turn into light and all this different stuff. So they're setting her up to become Photon. What they're going to do with it is anybody's guess. So now we get to the one that I'm going to talk about the most. Who would win in a fight, Dr. Giggles or the Ice Cream Man? Hopefully they'd kill each other because both those movies suck. Anyway, Coming to America. Oh, Lord. Now, I'm not going to say that it's all bad. There are some things in that movie that legitimately made me laugh. But when I found out that that movie was going to be PG-13 and not R, even though it wasn't even a theatrical release, it was straight to Amazon Prime, I knew it was going to be a disappointment. I knew that tonally it would be wrong. And I was right. It doesn't feel like Coming to America. It feels like one of Eddie Murphy's family-friendly comedies. It feels like Dr. Dolittle, or it feels like the Clumps, the Nutty Professor. It feels like one of those family-friendly, late in his career Eddie Murphy movies. It does not feel like Coming to America. It has a couple of references to... it's full of things that call back to the first movie. It's absolutely full of them. But the whole tone is shifted. The whole vibe is off. It just has this family-friendly feel to it. It has a couple of minor dick jokes to it. And a couple, dick and fart jokes. But it feels like, the Clumps or something. It doesn't feel like Coming to America. For one thing, they added some really hammy, campy, silliness humor to it. Now, Coming to America was silly too, but it was grounded in its reality, okay? They tried to make it seem like this was a real world thing, that there was an actual, very rich nation over in Africa where and kind of like Wakanda, but without all the super modern technology. And this guy was coming over here to find his bride. It was still grounded in the real world. It was a fantasy, but it was grounded in the real world. This one, it has this campy humor to it that's almost makes it feel like a spoof, like Airplane or Naked Gun. For example, Wesley Snipes, who is the best thing in this movie. Wesley Snipes is so funny in this movie. He steals every scene that he's in. By far the best part of the whole thing. He is the ruler of Zamunda's neighbor. He's their neighboring country. And he is the big brother of the princess that Akeem turns down and leaves at the altar to flee to America to find his bride. The one that he told to bark like a dog and hop on one foot. Wesley Snipes is her big brother. The name of that nation, okay? The name of Wesley Snipes' nation is Nextdoria. Nextdoria. That kind of cheesy kid joke or almost dad joke. That kind of corny stuff is littered throughout this movie. They bring back McDowell's, right? And McDowell's is now, they've expanded into Zamunda. And so they show a Zamundan commercial for McDowell's. And it shows that the restaurant is out in the middle of the African desert. There's like this CGI shot of this barren wasteland with no roads or nothing. And then just sitting there in the middle of all that dirt is a McDowell's. It's a very fake looking shot. And so you go into the McDowell's and they're showing other things that he's ripped off from McDonald's. Like he has a version of the McMuffin that's called the McFummin or some crap. They have a version of the McFlurry and it's the same thing, but they put the toppings on the bottom. And then the whole commercial ends with them taking one of those all the employees group shots. And here comes zipping in at the bottom a black guy dressed as Ronald McDonald. So it's a black guy in Ronald McDonald face. That's the kind of humor that's going on in this movie. There's a scene where you visit like the main camp of Wesley Snipes' group. And you see these corny things about weapons going on as they're panning by. It's straight out of something you'd see in Top Secret. And then it gets to Wesley Snipes, and he's sitting there in his kingly regalia, which also includes wearing a kilt because they wanted to borrow a page from the last King of Scotland. And he's sitting there reading a children's book to all these little kids that are children in his nation. And then he's like, the end. And then he was like, okay, everyone, go play now. Don't forget your grenades and your Kalashnikovs. But don't play with the sarin gas. That's dangerous. That's the kind of humor that's in this movie. The only time that it has humor that feels like an Eddie Murphy movie is when they bring back some of the side characters from the original film. The barbershop scenes feel exactly like the barbershop scenes from the first film. And they're just as funny. Would have been funnier if they had paid Cuba Gooding Jr. to be the guy sitting in the barber's chair again, but, you know. So the barbershop scenes are funny. The Randy Watson scene at the end of the movie feels like the first one, except that there's more people that love him, whereas in the original, there's only one guy in the audience that loves him, and it's the guy, oh, that boy's good. You know, now there's several people in the audience that actually like him, and his singing is even worse. His singing is like this nails on the chalkboard of the brain kind of off-tune screeching. So he's an even worse singer than he was in the first one. King Joffrey Joffer is in it, and he's James Earl Jones. He's excellent in everything that he does. Even Meteor Man, which is probably the worst thing he's ever done. But one thing I liked about that one, and I know I'm talking spoilers here, but one thing I really liked about that scene, that whole bit with the king, is he's talking to Akeem, and he's like, you know, I'm running short of time, my son, and I want to have the grandest funeral in the history of Zamunda. And Akeem's like, I shall grant you this, father, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, and I want to have it right now. In other words, he doesn't want to miss his own funeral. So it immediately goes to the big funeral scene. And they have, all these blast from the past musical acts like In Vogue and Salt and Pepper are in it and what have you. And in the middle of all this, pomp and circumstance, King Joffrey Joffer motions for a king to come over to him, and he tells him, remember what I told you, my son. I'm going to die now. And then he grins and just lays his head down and dies. That was a perfect scene, because that's exactly what you would expect from a guy who is as kingly as Joffrey Joffer, that he is so much the man that he dictates the very second when he takes his last breath. It was just perfect. I loved it. I loved that scene. The other thing that made me laugh out loud is when they link Wesley Snipes to the princess that that Akeem abandoned to go to America. Well, she was raised to obey everything that Akeem said. And so for the last 30 years, this woman has been barking like a dog and hopping on one foot. And it's driven her insane. And when that revelation hit, I laughed really, really hard. Now, Eddie Murphy as Akeem was more or less a straight man in the first film, aside from the, yes, F you too, and all that kind of stuff. But for the most part, he was the straight man, and all the comedy came from the characters around him. That's more or less the same thing here, except Eddie Murphy has even taken a farther step back and is more of him and Zemi, Arsenio Hall, are basically supporting characters. And the main story is about his son from America and his daughters. And, when it showed in the trailer, the whole thing that, it is against the law for a woman to take the throne. You knew how it was going to end. You knew that his son, for whatever reason, was not going to become king, and that his successor would be named as his oldest daughter. You knew that's where it was going to go, and it did. So most of the stuff that happens in it, I kind of called where it was going to go. There's some really cool CG in it where they de-age Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall to add additional scenes to the scene where they go to the nightclub and meet all those different women at their table. They inject new scenes into that, and it almost looks seamless. It almost looks like they just recovered footage that was never used in the first film. That's how good the CG for it looks. But basically, the reason that he has a son is because that first night when they went to that nightclub, Zemi meets these two women, one of which is Leslie Jones, and they bring them back to their crappy apartment in Queens. And Leslie Jones' character drugs Akeem, gets him stoned, where he doesn't know what's going on, and she basically rapes him while he's stoned, and that's where his son comes from. He remembers it that he got attacked by a hyena. His memory of it is that he got attacked by a hyena or a warthog or something, but no, it was her climbing on top of him and raping him. So that's one reason why the movie is getting some backlash, is because it turns rape into a joke, etc., etc. If a woman gets raped, it's not funny, but if a guy gets raped, it's played for comedy, blah blah blah. But anyway, another problem I had with it was the set design. You had some things that were so right, it was astounding, like the barbershop. The barbershop looks exactly like it did in the first film. The exterior looks the same. The interior looks the same. They're absolutely identical. Then you go to Zamunda, and they have this CGI shot that shows how big and grand it is, which is cool because the original film had matte paintings. And whereas in the original, it looked like they used some kind of really classy resort as the exteriors for it, and some of the interiors that weren't on a soundstage. But it was convincing in the original film as this grand palace that you might see in a rich African nation. The interiors in this film looks like they went out to Beverly Hills and rented some big-ass mansion and just hung a bunch of African masks and palm trees everywhere to try to make it look like an African home. But it so much doesn't look like an African home. It just looks like some rich, some mansion out in West Hollywood or up in the hills somewhere, that they've just stuck a bunch of tropical plants and African art on the walls. It almost looks like the mansion that Uncle Fester's wife buys in Adam's Family Values. That's what the interiors look like. And they get to the throne room, and instead of this massive big throne room, with the king's grand throne that has this giant seashell going up behind it thing, it's just a plain little throne that looks like they stole from a medieval times. And it looks like it's just made of wood, and they spray painted it with gold paint. It doesn't have the same effect as that throne room in the first film. So right off the bat, you can tell that there wasn't as much money thrown into it. It's got some emotional payoffs in it, and it has some laughs in it. And another thing is some of the direction in it. Now, I know that the director is a good director because I've seen some of the other movies the director has made. But some of the shots, the lighting and everything doesn't make it look like a theatrical film. It makes it look like one of those 90s era made-for-TV sequels that we would get. Like when they made a made-for-video Addams Family 3. Or when they made Revenge of the Nerds 3, and it was a made-for-TV movie on Fox. That's what this looks like. That's what it looks like in widescreen. Somehow the way he framed his shots, how he lit the shots, the cinematography of it makes it look small. Never mind the fact that it's called Coming to America. They spend like 10 minutes tops in America. They should have called it Coming to Zamunda or Coming from America. Because you're barely in America in the whole thing. He comes to America. He goes to the barber shop. He finds out that his son scalps tickets in front of a stadium. So you have a 5-minute scene in front of the stadium. Then you have a 5-minute scene in their crappy apartment. And then they're back in Zamunda. Then at one point they go back to America. They go back in the barber shop for 5 minutes. Then they go to a fly-by-night wedding chapel for about 10 minutes. 5-10 minutes. And that's all you see of America. And the whole core of Coming to America was it was a fish out of water story. And seeing him, how he, how intuitive he was and intelligent he was and how compassionate he was, and he was just kind of above the dinginess of 80s America. All of that is gone because he's barely in it. He's barely in America in this one. So, I mean, if you stack it up against some of Eddie Murphy's other family comedies like The Klumps and whatnot, it's about that level. But if you sit it side by side with Coming to America from 88, it's not even close. It's not even close. Like I said, Wesley Snipes is the best thing in it. Absolutely, without question. Wesley Snipes is the funniest component of the whole damn movie. There were parts of it I enjoyed, but most of it I was just, There was only a couple of things that made me laugh out loud. So far, biggest disappointment of the year. Now all of my hopes are riding on the Snyder Cut and Godzilla and Kong. And then I don't really have anything else to look forward to until like The Matrix 4. Which we don't even have a trailer for yet, so my hopes aren't exactly high there. It's not the worst movie Eddie Murphy has done. It's not Pluto Nash. It's not Metro. But it's not even close to the best thing that he's done. And I feel that it's not a budgetary problem, it's not really a director's problem, and it's not an acting problem. It's a screenplay problem. He gave this project to people that don't understand how Eddie Murphy comedies work, that don't understand his sense of humor. He gave them a plot outline, and they made something that just goes to show you that these a lot of these modern writing teams just don't know how to craft a good comedy anymore. You know, and you know, they didn't like beat you over the head with the female empowerment stuff. You know, it made sense. It made sense, and it wasn't, you know, it wasn't just beating you over the head with lip service. I mean, the daughter character, I can't remember the name of the actress that plays her. She was really good in it. She's gorgeous, and you know, she played the part very well. You cared about her as a character. She wasn't just there to be the female empowerment character, you know. She had an actual arc, and she saw it through, and you believed that she would be a good leader for Zamunda. They set that up well. What they rushed was the relationship between her and her newfound brother. Because when he first gets there, she hates his guts, won't have nothing to do with him. And then after one scene where he jokes around with her a little bit and explains to her the difference between her world and his world, all of a sudden, bam, they're bestest buds. And the same thing happens with his love interest. At the beginning of the movie, when he first gets to Zamunda, he's introduced to his royal barber. And she's also gorgeous. Gorgeous, very attractive woman. And just really welcoming, compassionate face. And she was really good too. But they have like 3 freaking scenes together, and then they're talking about getting married. 3 scenes. You know, the romance between Akeem and Lisa was something that stretched across the whole film before it came to fruition. He becomes best friends with his sister who hates him after 1 scene, and he gets a girl to fall in love with him in 3 scenes. Now, either that part of the script just wasn't fleshed out at all, or a whole bunch of stuff was left on the cutting room floor. And I got to believe that that for some reason they cut this movie down a lot. And that's because there's stuff in the trailer that's not in the movie. The whole line about Wakanda, and he's like, oh, Wakanda's a fictional nation, Zamunda is very real. That's not in it. And then there's other scenes from the trailer, like using a picture of Hakeem for target practice with a machine gun. Not in the movie. They cut at least a bunch of stuff that was in the trailer out of the actual movie. Why? It's not even a theatrical release. It's not even why would you cut those things out? Were they going to give your movie an R rating because Wesley Snipes shoots a painting? Why were those cut out? There's no excuse for it, no reason for it. And I feel like they cut out some things that might have fleshed it out a little bit more and made it feel less goofy and less like a spoof than it did. But anyway, just another example of waiting too long to make a sequel to where you're having to get writers who were not involved in the original project and so don't get the vibe of what the first film was, writing it, and it messes up the whole thing. I'm disappointed. I knew I'd be disappointed, so I shouldn't be disappointed, but I'm disappointed anyway. And those are the 2 things that I wanted to talk about. That took up the first 40 minutes of the 7th cast. You're now free to ask questions and stuff. Seventh, would you agree that while sitcoms usually serve as entertainment, they can be used as time machine mechanisms to the decades for which they took place in? That's very true. And that's one of the things that, you know, WandaVision was kind of poking fun at. Norbit is the worst Eddie Murphy movie. I don't know about that. I don't like Norbit. But, you know, there are things about Norbit that I would sit through again before rewatching Metro or even Daddy Daycare. Playing Borderlands 3 for the first time. Story sucks. Gameplay's improved a lot. Yeah, not having a villain up to the standards set by Handsome Jack really hurt that game. No, Daryl is not in the film, and Lisa's sister is not in the film. Other than that, just about everybody comes back. Even Louis Anderson, the guy that's like, right now I'm on fries. Next I could be on, that guy. He's in it. Lisa's father is in it. The two twins that they meet at the nightclub. Everybody wants to touch my breast. Those guys, those twins, they're in it. They pulled back as many of the little side characters as they could. But they really missed an opportunity. They didn't bring back Samuel Jackson. They could have had a scene where, Akeem runs into him and, getting arrested that day, threw him in the clink and he had a new life coming out. And, they could have done something with Samuel Jackson there. And I don't know if maybe it was too much money or what, but for whatever reason, that was an opportunity to joke that they didn't take. You should do more movie reviews. They're epic. Thank you. What's the movie that has the best looking CGI in your opinion? Any movie where they have to tell you after the fact that it's not CG. Or that it is CG, that it's not real life. I don't think this film has the best CG, but to give you an example, Man of Steel. I did not know that the Kryptonian battle armor that you see in that film was not actual costuming until a couple of years after I watched it. And I found out that all that battle armor was CG armor and that the actors were actually walking around in gray pajamas. I had no idea. It had totally convinced me. I just thought those were costumes. How powerful will Wanda be in Doctor Strange? Well, they planted a seed there, when Agatha said something about even more powerful than the Sorcerer Supreme. Have you ever seen, from the name of it, I would say that I haven't and that I don't want to, Shadowhood. I don't get the hate for Metro. It's just a boring movie. It's not very good. It's a boring, dull movie. The other day I had shrimp mac and cheese. That sounds gross. I hate seafood. I hope they're leaving Trading Places alone. I do too, but they are making Beverly Hills Cop 4. Here's to hoping it's rated R. And I don't know how good that's going to be because, Eddie's got a pot belly now. And he proves in this movie that he can't run very fast, which was one of Axel Foley's things. He's constantly running through all those movies. I mean, they already ruined that franchise with Beverly Hills Cop 3 when they made it PG-13. So Lord knows how that's going to turn out. I dread the day. I hope they get it right, but I just, my gut tells me it's going to suck. What was your favorite joke you remember from Nora? I haven't watched it in years. I just remember there was a couple of scenes here and there that made me laugh. I don't remember. I don't even remember the plot. Did you find anything woke in the movie at all? Well, to some extent, like I said, the whole female empowerment thing about, they mentioned, it's against the law for a woman to take the throne. You knew when they did that by the end of the movie, his oldest daughter was going to take the throne. But like I said, they didn't bash you over the head with it. They also don't have any nudity. They allude to the whole bathing thing, the royal bathers, but they don't have topless women in the tub with him or anything. They didn't do that this time. So there's no nudity in it. There's no F words in it at all. In fact, at one point, Akeem says, "I'm the MFing king." Literally, "I'm the MFing king." I'm like, really? And they just took Eddie Murphy's balls and they put him in a box before he filmed his scenes. I swear. I was gonna watch Angry Joe's review, but it was just too dang long, man. It was like over an hour long, and I just didn't feel like sitting through an hour long review. Take the money out. What money? What are you talking about? Waiting for GameStop to get a Series X in stock at the end of the year because trading a One X will make it $275. I'm not going to trade in my One X because it's the only model of the Xbox One that I have. You know, when I finally get a Series X, I will just give Eighth the One X, and he can have that in his room for if he wants it for anything, which he doesn't need because he has Game Pass on his PC anyway. Do you feel gaming is very dry because of a lack of hardware availability, therefore making the games delayed? It seems that way. It seems like they keep pushing games back just because they want more people to have the hardware before they release the game so they'll sell better. Do you think Hollywood's going to embrace deep fake technology? I think they're already using it to some extent. Like in my mind, the de-aging technology that they used here in Coming to America and in the Marvel films is sort of a form of deep fake. Snyder Cut is 4 hours. Oh, by the way, people keep those of you who mentioned Trading Places, Coming to America 2 has a reference to the Duke brothers from Trading Places, the ones that were hobos in the original Coming to America, and Akeem gave them money, and they're all, Mortimer, we're back. You know, that's referenced in Coming to America because Akeem's son goes on a job interview, and the job interview is at Duke and Duke. And it's like their grandson or something that's running the company now that he has the interview with. And it's Colin Yost or whatever from Weekend Update on Saturday Night Live playing their grandson. So that was kind of a nice little thing. They didn't do much with it, but it was at least a nice reference. Snyder Cut is 4 hours long and rated R. It sucks it'll be the last time we see Henry Cavill as Supes. We don't really know that yet. It really all depends on how the Snyder Cut does. Just because J.J. Abrams is wanting to make a black Superman film doesn't mean that Henry Cavill can't make a Man of Steel 2. Because black Superman in DC Comics is a character that's named Calvin Ellis. Calvin Ellis. Get it? Calvin Ellis. And he's an alternate reality Superman. He's from Earth 23 or something like that. So, you know, just because they're talking about making him into a movie doesn't mean that there can't be another Man of Steel with Cavill in the role. Because they're going into this whole multiverse thing. So, we'll see. But the biggest thing that I don't like about the upcoming Snyder Cut is that it's going to be in 4:3. It's not going to be in widescreen. And, you know, I'm so used to watching stuff in widescreen now, I can't stand watching stuff in 4:3. Unless it's just something that's already old, like rewatching old episodes of Transformers or something. Seventh, did you like Disney's Meet the Robinsons? Yeah, that's actually one that me and Eighth liked quite a bit. That's the one with the I got a big head and little arms. Yeah, I've seen it a dozen times. It was one of Eighth's favorite movies when he was younger, and he still likes it today. Take the money out. Oh, from the Samuel Jackson's character. Sorry. Do you think Sony might chill their content policies to compete with Nintendo in Japan? Doesn't seem that way so far. Borderlands 3 PS5 120 frames per second a day. I know, Master Millions. I know. Beverly Hills Cop 3 is slightly underrated. I don't know about that. I think that movie is terrible. They watered it down. They made it way more slapsticky than the first film. You know, the whole they borrow the whole concept from National Lampoon's Vacation, where they have a Walt Disney ripoff character who runs a theme park, and you had the whole scene where he's in that. It's the earthquake ride from Universal Studios, but they have a bunch of stunt doubles dressed up in leftover Xylon armor from Battlestar Galactica doing the robot across the ride to make it look like they're animatronic, and it was just so cheesy. The majority of that movie is just absolutely awful. So no, I don't think it's underrated at all. It's a piece of shit. The best scene in the whole movie is the stunt scene on the Ferris wheel. And even that they kind of ruined with some cheesy green screen effects with Eddie when they're cutting away from the long distance shots of the stunt double. I find it odd that everyone hated Batman vs. Superman but can't wait for the Snyder Cut. I hated the theatrical version of Batman vs. Superman. The extended 3-hour director's cut is actually a lot better because it fills in a lot of the plot holes. Have you and Eighth ever arm wrestled? No. I got the Neo collection in the mail. Cool. What's your opinion on this recent rumors about a Switch Pro? Well, I mean, obviously they're going to have new hardware at some point. It's just this late in the game when the system is, like 4 years old now? Why would they come out with a refresh and not just the next generation of hardware? It's weird. Because Nintendo doesn't do they typically don't do the 6 to 7 year thing. They usually come out, with the exception of there was quite a gap between the SNES and the N64, but typically theirs is like 4 to 5 years. So it's weird to think that they were going to just release a more powerful Switch as opposed to a whole new console generation. Rewatched the Cannonball Run and 2. Best intro ever. Did you know that there's a Cannonball Run 3? It just doesn't have any of the original actors in it, and it's not called Cannonball Run 3. Had John Candy in it, I think, as I recall. And I can't remember the name of it. It's something generic like High Speed or something like that. Let me see if I can find it for you. It bombed at the theater. Nobody watched it. I think the only original character it had was Speed Zone. It was called Speed Zone. And the only original character it had, I think, was Jamie Farr coming back as the Arabian Prince or whatever. I think he was in it. But then it didn't have anybody else. Certainly didn't have, Dom DeLuise or Burt Reynolds in it. As I recall, it had John Candy in it. 7th, you say you have to constantly remind yourself to drink water as you don't ever feel thirsty. Do you drink a lot of caffeine drinks? I've had similar effects when I drink Coca-Cola. No, I do force myself to drink a lot of tea, but it's generally pretty low caffeine tea. What are your thoughts on Kick-Ass? First movie was really good. Second movie was trash. 7th, what's cooking, man? Nothing right now. I'm talking to you guys. How many times have you gotten into a fight at school? Quite a few, actually. Although by the time 10th grade rolled around, it had mostly stopped. Do you think Trump is worse than Bush? That's a political question. I'm not going to get into that. I've warned you guys, I don't talk about politics on here. I'm proud not to own a Switch. Nintendo's business strategy and lack of new IPs and interesting sequels is why I skipped this gen. Well, I'm a collector, so I was going to own it one way or the other. Are you enjoying retro games or games that replicate the old formulas more than modern games? They're all right. I still play retro games on the regular, and some of the indie games that replicate the old game styles are good. Oh, good goodness, good. A lot of them are crap. It just kind of depends. What year were you born in? What does that matter to you? Will you be playing the new Prince of Persia remake when it comes out? Depends on what I think of it when I see it. Did you see new screenshots of Halo Infinite? It gives a little hope. Yeah, I saw them, but I want to see it actually moving. And plus, they didn't. All they showed were environments. The thing that sucked the most about the first footage they showed wasn't the environments so much as it was the characters. You know, why didn't they show characters? Why did they just show environments? Do remasters annoy you? Some do, some don't. You know, if all the remaster is that they've upported it to a higher resolution, it's a ripoff. It's a cash grab. You're going to have to throw up more than just simply putting a higher resolution to it. So, for example, the re-release of Kingdoms of Amalur. They raised the resolution. They raised the frame rate. They tightened the controls in some things. And they included the DLC into the package. So for me, that was a worthwhile remaster. I don't do an impression of Dr. Giggles. I haven't seen that movie in over 20 years anyway. I only watched it once and I hated it. 7th, do you think old movie posters from the 80s look the best? Yes. Movie posters nowadays, for the most part, look like shit. How many push-ups can you do? Again, what the fuck difference does it make? 7th, have you played the Dead Space series? Yes, I've played all 3. The third one was crap. 7th, what do you think of Steven Spielberg's War of the Worlds? It was okay. Do you think Sony is the laziest out of Nintendo and Microsoft? Well, your question makes no sense because you say, do you think Sony is the laziest out of Nintendo and Microsoft? Sony isn't in Nintendo and Microsoft. Your question would have made sense if you had said, do you think Sony is the laziest out of the 3 hardware manufacturers? Or do you think Sony is the laziest out of Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft? But you said, do you think Sony is the laziest out of Nintendo and Microsoft when Sony isn't a part of Nintendo and Microsoft? So your question is a fail, sir. 7th, have you ever played the Simpsons movie game? And if so, how do you like it? The one that came out in 2008 is not bad. It's a simple, basic beat 'em up that has some questionable platforming, but it's not bad. It's better than most of the stuff that came out in the 8 and 16-bit generation, to say the least. That being said, my favorite Simpsons video game is still the arcade game. Who makes the dumbest decisions out of the 3, Microsoft, Sony, or Nintendo? I don't think any of them make a whole lot of dumb decisions. All of them have made dumb decisions at one point or another. But so far this gen, they've all been pretty spot on. The biggest mistake that all 3 of them made has been not trying to upgrade to a higher quality of analog stick. You know, they're still using the same kind of analog stick mechanics that they've been using for the last 2 generations. That needed to have been enhanced and improved upon. But other than that, there haven't been any serious bungles so far this generation. Of course, Nintendo doesn't have new hardware out yet either. Would you consider doing a first impressions of Returnal? We'll see. Where's your epic Lola Bunny rant? I don't have one because Space Jam sucked, and this new one's going to suck too. Why the hell would I give a rat's ass? What's your opinion on Sony censoring silly anime games? I don't really care because I don't play a whole lot of the silly anime games. I play some Japanese RPGs, sure, but I don't really play a whole lot of the anime games, especially not the visual graphic novels that a lot of this stuff is being edited out of. I don't play that genre much at all. I've played maybe 1 or 2 examples of it, like the 0 Hour or whatever that series is. Do you like the Battlefield series? Not especially. I'm not a big fan of military shooter games. Do you think Sony TV giants Do you think Sony become TV giants like back in the day? Uh, if they start, being a little bit more price friendly, sure, why not? Seventh, name some of your favorite movie games. Batman on the NES, Batman on the Sega Genesis, X-Men Origins Wolverine. That's an example. There's a few that were actually good. Kingdoms of Amalur is getting an additional expansion later this year. We'll see. Might be good. Seventh, isn't it weird that Cyberpunk and The Last of Us 2 were the most hyped video games of 2020 and both were disappointing? No, I don't think that's weird at all. It's not the first time it's happened. I'm kind of used to it. Seventh, are you interested in that new Raya Dragon movie? I'm interested in seeing it, but I'm not interested enough to pay $30 to see it. I'll wait till it's free on Disney Plus and watch it then. I'm in no rush. Where am I going to go? Why does Sony like to copy Nintendo? For the same reason that Nintendo has copied other companies over the years. They see an idea and they run with it. Or they see an idea and they see a potential in making it better. Microsoft does it too. Microsoft ripped off a ton of shit. The original Xbox was basically a upgraded Dreamcast with a hard drive. Microsoft is lazy. That lack of exclusives, man. Series X feels like a refresh. Well, the main reason that the Series X feels like a refresh is because they didn't redo the UI. It has the same UI as the Xbox One X. So you boot it up and it doesn't feel like you're really experiencing anything new. Does the movie Nobody look good to you? Nobody. Is that movie with Ryan Reynolds where it takes place in a video game? It's if that's the one you're talking about, it's too hard to tell. If that's the same movie, if that's the one. Do you play Onechanbara? Or didn't you play Onechanbara? I remember your PS4 review impressions. It showed off your eclectic taste in games. I played that one because when I first saw a trailer of it, it almost looked like it could be kind of a Devil May Cry style game, but that's not what it was. Are there any movies from your childhood that you wish were being remade? Not especially. If anything, I think a movie from the 80s that could do with like a remake or just a modern day sequel would be The Last Starfighter. Because, that one was popular, but it wasn't a major hit. And so, I think that would be a really good one if they did it. Where's your mom? In the grave. You're starting to show your troll tendencies there, Shadowhood. You're trying to press buttons and you're trying to kind of pick little spots in between questions that seem like actual questions to try to get a little info out of me or try to get a little under my skin. I wasn't born yesterday, son. I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing. Don't troll a troll, son. You'll get found out pretty quick. All three copy each other. Xbox is making... Yeah. Seventh, is WandaVision any good? I'm hearing mixed things. It was okay. Remnant from the Ashes is free on PlayStation Plus. Did you like it? I haven't played Remnant. That would have been more of an 8th thing, but he didn't care for it, as I recall. Did you hate the Mario live action film? No, I didn't hate it. It's one of those movies that's so bad it makes it funny. So, I've watched it multiple times just to watch how bad it is. I'm going to buy you the special collector's edition of Dr. Giggles and mail it to you. Oh, you don't have to do that, I assure you. Freaking hate that movie. Tray for Life. Okay. Maybe I'm just frustrated because of the scalpers, but what's the point of buying new hardware when we're playing the same games from the early 360 days? Don't have enough new stuff to play. That's probably one of the reasons why Microsoft has pushed backwards compatibility so strong, is because they knew with all these studios they were buying that it was going to take a couple of years into the system's life before real bangers started showing up aside from Halo Infinite. So, hey, you can now play all these old games that you didn't play when they were new. Yes, I have Final Fantasy VII Remake. I have it physical. Do you think Amazon and maybe Google should have made polished but less costly games for the portable systems like tablets and phones to compete with Switch? Actually, Pat the NES Punk and Ian on the CU podcast said the same thing about Stadia, that instead of spending millions trying to buy licenses for big games, big but old games like Red Dead Redemption 2, they should have just made it the system for playing exclusive indie games that they could have gotten exclusivity for on the cheap. And I kind of agree, but at the same time, that could have had the potential of just turning the Stadia into another Ouya. My wife tried to get a PS5 from Best Buy when was actually in stock, and it was only for 5 seconds. No good movies coming out. Well, we'll see. You got Snyder Cut this month. You got Godzilla versus Kong this month. We'll see. Is Ronda Rousey overrated? Well, I mean, she's kind of out of the scene now because she decided to be a mom. Do you like cats? No, I'm a dog guy. Answer me. I've answered everything that you've said so far. It's not my fault if you ain't paying attention. Man, you've got to be better at your trolling if you're not even going to listen when I'm replying to you. Isn't that what you're here for? To try to get a response out of me? And I give you a response and you act like I didn't even say anything? You're really bad at this. 7th, do you think Game Informer was a lackluster game publication back in the day? I feel Nintendo Power was better. I liked Nintendo Power, but, I haven't looked at an issue of Game Informer in years. I don't even know if they still print them on paper anymore. So, I don't know. Oh, by the way, I wasn't even paying attention. We got 2 hours remaining. We have had 0 donations. And I also forgot to do my usual spiel. This is a 3-hour podcast. Runs from 6 to 9. And it can be extended by donation. Total of $50 donated. I stay till 10, 75 till 11. If it's 100 or more, I stay for an ass-blistering 6-hour podcast like last week. So we've had 0 donations so far. A shadow on thin ice. Yeah, he's about to get soul scorched, if you get my drift. Do you think we'll see a Godzilla vs. Kong trilogy? No, I don't think so. For one thing, Toho has not extended their license to make any more movies past Godzilla vs. Kong. So as far as anyone knows so far, this is going to be the last MonsterVerse movie. Because Toho are rebooting Godzilla over in Japan. But I guess if Hollywood dangled enough money in their face. 7th, what are your thoughts on some of the casting choices for the Borderlands movie? They puzzle me. I mean, I don't remember them off the top of my head, but 8th was reading off some of the people that they had hired to play some of these characters, and I'm like, really? Really? Like the guy, I don't remember who it was, but he told me who was going to be playing Brick or whatever. who's like, this massive 7-foot black guy, and he told me who was playing Brick, and I'm like, really? You'd think they'd go with The Rock or something, or Terry Crews, but him? I don't remember who it was, but it shocked me. Let's see here. I'm glad Stadia died. Most people in the U.S. has had bad internet, and until we get another competitor, it's not going to change. When I saw how they were doing things, I knew that wasn't going to be the one that was going to herald in streaming gaming, because they were still making you pay full price for the games. So you were paying a subscription fee, and then you were still having to pay full price for the games. I knew that wasn't going to work. Not for streaming it. Rest in peace, magic powers. I haven't had to use my magic powers tonight so far. Did you like the South Park Ubisoft games? You mean Stick of Truth and the Shattered But Whole, or whatever it was called, something Butthole. I have both of them. They were pretty good. Yeah, Soul Scorcher used to be a good guy to have in the chat, but for whatever reason, he had to stick up his ass last night, and he paid the price. That night, and he paid the price. It is what it is. I don't hold it against him, but at the same time, I warned him repeatedly that I wasn't going to tolerate it. And he tried to carry the conversation on in comments on the video after the fact. Still refusing to drop it like I kept telling him to. Did you ever replace your washer and dryer? No. They still work, but they're all banged up and dented. As long as they still work, I don't care what they look like. That's part of my redneckness. As long as it still functions, I don't give a crap what it looks like. I'm not trying to win a laundry room beauty contest. You know what I'm saying? Did you like the Family Guy Simpsons crossover? Not really. They could have done more with it than what they did. Which non-gaming company do you think would have a chance to succeed in the current gaming market? None of them. This market, as it stands right now, is just big enough to support 4 platforms, PC and 3 consoles, and everybody make money. You have a 5th one come in? No. Drop any Elvis lately? 7th. Little bit. I always have a little bit of Elvis in my playlist, if that's what you're getting at. When I get an iPad Pro, I want to try PS5 remote play. I've never tried it. I've never tried it either. Of course, I don't have tablets. Sony gives you a random spot in line. Wait, so you're telling me we would have to pay $60 to not own games? Yeah, that's the way Stadium worked. You paid a monthly subscription fee, and then if there was a game you wanted to play on it, even though it was streaming and you were not getting a physical copy or a downloaded copy to a hard drive or a thumbstick or anything, you still had to pay full retail for it. It wasn't just paying a subscription fee and you get access to their whole library. That's not how it worked at all. You discipline Soul Scorcher like a good dad. He's not a bad guy, but he just needed to move on from the convo. Exactly. I wasn't saying that he wasn't allowed to have his opinions on such things. I kept telling him, this isn't the place for that. Go have those opinions somewhere where those kind of things are discussed. And he wouldn't listen. He had a stick up his ass that night, so I had to, I had to institute the proper attitude adjuster. Do you think Iwata was terrible? He made some really bad choices. I'll say that. Sony is allowing this summer storage expansion finally. Good. No, I mean your near life ending Elvis type dumps. Oh no, I haven't had a rectal ripper like that since then. That hasn't been a repeating thing. And it's only happened once before that time. It's only happened to me twice in my life. I want a Simpsons game that was inspired by the first 10 seasons only. Yeah, I wouldn't hold my breath for that. Tiger Woods got into a bad accident and destroyed his legs. You know, they ought to get a warrant and check the wardrobe of all the dresses of his ex-wife for brake fluid. How's the car been running? Car's running just fine. Runs like a dream. I love the beast. I love my car. And I'm going to have that car for a long time because, it had 19,000 miles on it when I bought it. It's got 29,000 miles on it now. I've had it almost 3 years. So in 3 years, I've put 10,000 miles on it. I've put less on it in 3 years than the average person would put on their car in 1 year. So yeah, I'm gonna have that car for a long time. It might vary unless they force everyone to get electric cars or some crap. That's probably going to be the last car I ever buy, unless something just disastrously bad happens to it. That's not how free speech works, you fail troll. You're skating on thin ice, son. You're going to have to be more entertaining with your trolling than that if you're expecting to stick around for more than one show. The questions and answers are becoming funny. Do you think it's time for The Simpsons and Family Guy to end? They probably should have ended a few years ago, both of them. Simpsons should have ended probably after season 8. Family Guy, it hasn't been good for at least 4 years. The car is only for groceries and Retropalooza. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. It ain't for work no more, that's for damn sure. My productivity has actually gone up since I started doing work from home. So my company's in love with me. They love me to death. They're giving me before taxes, over a $7,000 bonus this year, which is way bigger than what I got last year. It's more than twice what I got last year. But of course, taxes will take at least $1,500 of that, so I'll only end up with like $5,500, and I'm putting it all on bills. I'm putting it all on eliminating bills because this summer I've got to start paying my student loans off. All of my exemptions have run out. So that's over $200 a month that I have to start paying. So I'm going to take that bonus. I'm just going to knock some debt out so that, I'm not going to have more money per month, but I'm not going to have less money per month either when I start having to pay that again. And then I'm going to take the money that I was paying on those debts and put them on other debts and just start eliminating all of my debts so that by the time once those are done, I can double up on my car payments because I only have 3 years left to pay on it. And that way I can pay my car off within a year and a half. And then, I'll be doing good because at that point, I'll be after all my bills are paid, clearing around $2,000 a month, where I'll have $2,000 a month that I can put it away or spend it on something that I need. And then, at that point, me and 8th are going to start looking at saving up to buy a house. I've been renting this house for forever. I've been avoiding looking at buying another house because of how expensive property taxes are here in Texas. They're extremely expensive. And so I've been kind of avoiding that. But once I get all that debt paid off, I'm going to start saving up for a nice sized down payment on a house. So where I can get on a mortgage that's less than what I'm paying in rent. And then I can just, set aside every month for the property taxes. So by the time the end of the year comes, I can just transfer it out of savings and pay it. And that way, I can move into a little corner of the house and 8th can have most of the house to himself. And then, when he meets the eventual Mrs. 8th, I can just live in the little in-law apartment on the far side of the house, and they won't ever even see me unless they want to see me. And then when I die, the house just goes straight to eighth, and he doesn't even have to worry about saving up to buy his own home because he'll already have the nicest home that he'll ever need. That's my goal. Whether I actually get there or not is another question. But that's the one last thing that I can do for him in this life. He's 18 years old. He's on the cusp of starting his own life within just a few years. And so that's one more thing that I can do for him, aside from, first car, is try to help him to where he doesn't have to worry about saving up to get a first home. He doesn't have to do like I did and live in crappy apartments for years before being able to afford a home. He just goes straight into having a nice home. And I can at least try to leave him with that before I go. And that's what I'm going to try to do. I may not get there, but I'm damn well going to try. I just would like to be making more money than I am right now. But if I can at least eliminate some of my debts, that'll allow me to stretch the money I do make farther. And that's also why you haven't been seeing me buy up every game that came out since the PS5 came out. I've lowered some of my game spending to try to have more cash on hand for the eventuality of getting that bonus and starting eliminating all of my debt. And that's another thing. I don't want to pass any debt to him, which, they have, for the most part, debts die when you die, but there's some things that they try to get out of the descendant, and I'm trying to avoid him even having to deal with that kind of crap. So, he's already going to get, at this point, if I was to die right now, like close to $200,000, like $150,000 from my life insurance, and then there's like 40 or 45,000 in my 401k, something like that. And then, of course, everything that I own, if he eBayed all of that, that'd be, just the games alone would be somewhere around another $35,000, $40,000 just for the video game stuff, if he got book value anyway. And so, I'm trying to make sure that when I go, he's going to have more than, a much better head start than I did. Anyway. Is Shadow an alternate Scorcher account? I wouldn't put it past him. I wouldn't put it past him. 7th, have you had any funny memories being inside a Blockbuster video? I used to work for Blockbuster. In my early IT career, when I first moved to Florida, after my bills were coming out, I wasn't quite having as much fun money as I wanted to have, as far as going and doing things or going on dates or which I didn't do a whole lot of dates. I just did a whole lot of screwing, but buying games or whatever that I wanted to buy. And so for a while there, I worked a second job. First, I did an entire additional full-time job. So I'd go in and do my computer thing, and then I would go home and sleep for a few hours, and then I'd get up and work the midnight shift at a grocery store stocking groceries with a bunch of Muslim Croatians. Those guys were so funny. There was one, his name was Sayad, and I miss him to this day. He was funny as hell, and he was a good friend. But after a while, I decided that doing 2 full-time jobs was just too much, and so I quit the grocery thing, and I got a part-time job, second shift, at Blockbuster. And there wasn't really anything funny that happened there. It was just your typical, video store clerk stuff. We never really got up to any shenanigans or anything. We will have to buy you some salmon bagel spread. Nope, don't like seafood. Theaters are reopening, so maybe things will calm down enough for you to get back to watching movies on the silver screen. Well, you never know. Are you tired of cancel culture? Yes. I don't want to really get too much into that, though, because it starts to lean too much into political stuff. It always becomes a political conversation. 7th, have you ever worked at a movie theater? No, never worked at a movie theater. I'll tell you everything that I've ever done. Okay, you ready? I've been a bag boy. I've been a video store clerk for Far More. Then I became a midnight stock guy for Food Max. Then I became a pizza chef at Pizza Hut. Then I did lawnmower repair and delivery for Sears. Then I became a Circuit City salesperson. Then I became a Campo salesperson. Then I became a Lowe's salesperson. Then I became an Office Max salesperson. Then I became a security guard at AT&T. Then I got my first. I did some in between all of that. I did some temp work, data entry stuff for McKee Bakery Company, Brock and Brock Candy, and a bunch of others. Then, because I was a security guard at AT&T, I got to know the people that worked at AT&T, and I got my first real IT job there. Then they transferred me to Florida. Then I left there and became a help desk person for the cable company there in Florida. And then they got bought by AT&T again, and I got laid off. Then I went up to Georgia for 6 months and worked as a field tech. And then after that, they moved me back to their Florida branch, and I was a field tech for them. Then I left them and worked for Walt Disney Travel Company. Then Disney laid me off. And after Disney, I got my degree. But in the middle of that, I worked at another help desk job for $12 an hour. Then I got my other degree, and I got a job with a brokerage firm, which required me to pass a background check with the CIA. I worked at the brokerage firm for a few years. Then the mortgage crisis happened, and I bounced around for a bunch of contract jobs for a few years. And in the middle of that, worked for 6 months at the company that I met my buddy Jeff, the one who does the guitar stuff. I met him. He was hired to be my boss at the place we were working, and it was a diagnostics place, and they were the ones that processed all the pee tests for employers. So employers would send cups of pee there to be analyzed, and I did IT there, and Jeff was my boss. And then eventually I landed at the company that I work now, and I've been with the company I work now for almost 9 years. It'll be 9 years this summer. So there's everywhere that I've ever worked. Let's see here. Without naming names, of course, except for like Farmore, because Farmore's out of business, so who cares? Do you have any concerns about the vaccine? I have concerns about the one they just announced that's only in one shot, but it's only 66% effective. I don't want that one. I want one that's like, 90-something% effective, not 60. What's more important to follow, the 10 Commandments or the 7 Deadly Sins? Well, 7 Deadly Sins is mostly a Catholic thing, so I would stick with the 10 Commandments. You're a good dad, 7. Thank you. Have you ever thought about investing? No, because I used to work for a brokerage firm, and that convinced me to never play the stock market. I watched too many people lose their ass. Do you think Konami is going to sell their gaming division? I think it more likely, at least right now, that they're just going to license out their properties to let other people make games for them. My parents didn't kick me out the minute I turned 18. I didn't have to move out until I was in my early 20s. And even then, it wasn't because they wanted me to move out. It's because they moved to Florida and I didn't want to go with them because I had just gotten that IT job. And so they moved to Florida. I got an apartment in Tennessee. And then the following year, the company I was working for moved me to Florida, but I was 3 hours away from my parents. So I still had my, I still had my independence. I didn't have them up my ass or anything like that. Was being a security guard scary? No, I didn't even have to carry a firearm. I had like a nightstick and a can of mace, and it was just walking around inside an office building at night. So I'd sit at the desk, and it's not like I was by myself. They had third shift workers there. I'd sit at the desk, and then once an hour I'd get up and walk the perimeter of the building, and then I'd sit back down at my desk. That's pretty much all I did. That's all I was there to do, was to watch the people that came in and out, to verify they were employees, and then walk the perimeter of the building once an hour. That's all. That's all I did. Check that doors that were supposed to stay closed were still closed and that kind of stupid crap. 7th, you have spread your work seed, sir. Okay. Dang, I lost count of how many jobs you had. At least 20 jobs. Wow. Well, I'm 46 and I started working when I was 16. I've been working for 30 years straight. And when I was younger, I didn't really have company loyalty or anything like that. I just went wherever the money was. If I'd been working at a company a year and some other company offered me an additional, 50 cents per hour or an extra $2,000 a year or whatever, I'd jump ship. And so the early years of my resume is just, year here, 2 years here, year here, 6 months here, 2 years here, because I was just bouncing from job to job to job. And eventually, it came back to bite me a little bit because on interviews, people would start to ask me, well, why have you had so many jobs? And I had to be honest and say, well, I didn't get fired from any of them. Some of them are from corporate layoffs, but most of it is just from me taking a higher paying job somewhere else. And they said, well, what would stop you from taking a higher paying job and leaving here? And I said, well, nothing really. So, I had to start paying attention to that, which I started paying attention to that when I was working for the brokerage firm. I was with them for 3 years. But the company that I'm with now is the longest I've ever spent at any one company by far. By far. Let's see here. Any funny security guards stories? Not really. Not really. I got hit on a lot. I was in a security guard outfit. I didn't look anything like a cop because the colors didn't match what the cop uniforms looked like. I looked like a Disney World security guard. I had like these blue shirts with dark dark blue pocket covers and a tie with a baseball cap and black shiny boots, and I'd get hit on all the time. And the odd thing about it is that a lot of them were black ladies. They just seemed to really like security guards. I mean, I had there was a couple of white girls here and there that came up and kind of, were flirting a little bit, but there was like a consistent number of black women that worked at that office I would be sitting there minding my own business, and they'd come walking up, and they'd be like, "Hey, you want to take me out for dinner after you're done patrolling?" and I took a couple of them up on it because I've never been prejudiced in that way. If you're attractive, you're attractive. It doesn't really have anything to do with your skin color. And I took a couple of them up on it, but it just seemed odd that the percentages had never been that strong in one direction at any place that I'd worked before. And I just had to assume it had something to do with the uniform. I couldn't think of any other reason why it would be different there from any other place that I'd worked. It was just strange. It was appreciated, but it was strange. No, I never had to use the mace. Where did you learn to code? I'm not a programmer. I'm not a coder. I'm a high-level analyst. I deal with information security and stuff like that. My degree is in network engineering. It's not in coding. I wish it was in coding. I'd be making a lot more money right now. But it wasn't in coding. Isn't the security job where you met the bisexual chick who had a girlfriend? No, she was a security guard where I worked. Reverse situation. When I got transferred by that company to Florida, she was a security guard there. And so I worked a later shift where I was typically the only one in the control room. And so she would come to do her nightly, hourly patrols, and she would stop to talk to me while I was in the control room because she had a badge to get in. And it just kind of grew from there. Welcome back, Cotter. You're here the same day as Neo GameSpark streaming. Okay, I don't even know who that is. Have you ever? No, I never had to use the mace. Wait, couldn't you just exclude some of the jobs when you were in interviews? I could have done that, but I mean, it's not like they couldn't have looked it up. Do you think there are too many people on the planet, or there aren't enough entrepreneurs creating opportunities? A little bit of both. You forgot to say you were a radio DJ. No, I didn't forget that because I didn't get paid to be a radio DJ. That was not a paying job. That was a volunteer thing. I did that strictly for fun, just to have the experience of being a DJ. I wasn't even in the communications program at college. But I had the gift of gab. I was good on a microphone. I was good at improvising, and I was good at multitasking. So I could be talking while running the control board and all the other things. And so, I went in and just sat with a DJ and watched how he did everything. And then the second half of his shift, they had me switch over and was running it and was talking and doing all the PSAs and everything. And they were like, he's a natural at this shit. And so I got it, even though I wasn't a communications major. And again, didn't get any money, but I was able to put it on my resume, and it was fun. I only did it like 3 days a week for like 4 hours in the morning. I had a 4-hour shift in the mornings, 3 days a week. Most girls who like security guards were black ladies in this day and age. That is ironic. I don't think it's ironic. And it's not something that's universal to black women. There are white women that love men in uniform regardless of what uniform it is. They just like the look of a uniform. The only thing that was strange about it was that the ratio was so far in that direction. In other places where I'd worked, it was more of an even mix, but when I worked at that particular place, and it was the first time I was working as a security guard, it's like it was like almost a consistent thing. And I was a security guard at an office complex that was a call center, and as you know, or maybe you don't know this, call centers have a high turnover rate. It's almost like having a revolving door on the front of the building. There are people that come in, realize they can't stand being a customer service rep, and they quit. And then there's more people coming in to replace them. And maybe that played into it. I don't know. Did you ever see Jeffrey Dahmer on TV when you were growing up? I saw the news stories about him, sure. Are you superstitious at all? Not especially. Have you ever seen a ghost? Yes, I have. I've told that story multiple times. Have you ever seen a fellow employee get arrested? I've had fellow employees that got arrested, but I wasn't there to see them get arrested. Master Millions, the Streamlab link doesn't work. Why doesn't it work for you, Master Millions? Do you get some kind of an error? Do you like streaming on YouTube or Twitch more? YouTube, because more of my audience is here. When I went to Twitch, it cut my audience in half. Thoughts on Jurassic Park for Sega Genesis? It was okay. I wasn't as big a fan of it as everyone else because, I wasn't as big a fan of the gameplay style. Have you had to confront a predator before? Depends on what you mean by predator. Nothing ever happened on my security job. I never had to do anything but walk around. There was never any events. Nothing ever happened there. You should start a radio show. I'm already doing a podcast. What more do you want? Jeez. 7th, I'm glad you never worked as a sign spinner. I used to do that to advertise mostly for real estate, and I'd occasionally get flipped off. No, I never had to be a sign spinner. 7th, I think Dark Star Archangel is referring to the fact that nowadays they want to okay. I'm trying to see if I can find a haunted location near my area. Just, search for your town and then just search for the name of your town and the word haunts. Could you regale us with a story about the Pizza Hut slob? Oh, God. That Pizza Hut that I worked at, now keep in mind, this was 1993, okay? This was 1993. Almost, going on 30 years ago. And that Pizza Hut was an HR rep's nightmare. There was so much sexual harassment going on in that place, and the women that worked there didn't care because half of them had boyfriends and yet were still, you know, cleaning the pipes of guys that worked there. They didn't care. And so, the guy that ran it was married. He was constantly cheating on his wife with one or two of the waitresses that worked there. You had a guy that got fired because he got caught beating off in the dough mix one morning. The manager would haze every person that they hired on by trying to convince the person that they had hired on that every male that worked at that Pizza Hut was a homosexual that was in on some kind of a group sex thing. So the manager would try to would haze the new hires, the new male hires that came in, by like trying to be stereotypically gay around them and trying to make them think that all the guys that worked there were like screwing each other in some big orgy thing. And then there was this guy that worked there as a chef. And I don't remember his name now. He looked like a hobo. He had long hair that he tied back. He always stank. He smelled like on the hobo power scale, he was about a 7 out of 10. He reeked of body odor every day that he came in. All of his fingernails were green, and it wasn't fingernail polish. His teeth were rotting out of his head. All of his teeth were a shade of green or going black. He always had dried and crusted stuff around here, which he said was sinuses, but I suspected that he was snorting coke. And on one particular occasion, he was making a pizza, and the customer brought the pizza back up to the counter and asked to see the manager. And the manager asked what was going on. And he said, "We found this in our pizza." And he held it up, and it was one of the dude's teeth. One of his rotted teeth had fallen out of his mouth into the pizza. So, of course, the manager refunded their money and gave them another pizza to replace it. And then he went and had that tooth bronzed and made it into a keychain on his key ring. That's the kind of guy he was. He was just like a tremendous, massive, adulterous troll. He was funny as hell. But, he was the epitome of what modern feminists try to say every straight man on the planet is. He was all of it in one person. Legit. And, he could be very funny in a 90s kind of way. But the shit that he did back then would have gotten him fired like that now. And it was an interesting experience. I was only there for 3 months. And I experienced all of that in a 3-month time span. The reason I got hired on there at all was because I had a friend working there. And he got me hired on. Because I was stocking shelves at a grocery store, and Pizza Hut offered slightly more money. And so, I was there for 3 months, and then I got another job on top of that. And so I went, that one paid even more money, so I went to that one. So, yeah. That Pizza Hut doesn't even exist anymore. It went out of business years and years and years ago. It was one of the big classic Pizza Huts, the way Pizza Huts used to look, the dine-in ones. And they had some arcade games up at the lobby. It had like the X-Men arcade game and some other stuff. Did you ever eat pizza from that particular establishment? The only pizza I ate there was pizza I made for myself. You were allowed to make yourself a personal pan pizza for lunch. And then at the end of your shift, if there was any pizzas that you had made that for whatever reason didn't get picked up or didn't get delivered or whatnot, you could take those home and give them to your family. I don't know how it is now, but my dad loved it because I was constantly bringing free pizza home. Same thing when I worked at the McKee Bakery. When I worked at the McKee Bakery doing data entry, they had a break room where all the walls of the break room were shelves that went floor to ceiling with every kind of Debbie cake that they made there. McKee Bakery made little Debbie cakes. And these were Debbie cakes that had not been purchased by retailers, and so they were on the brink of expiring, like they had to expire in a month. And so you were encouraged before you went home that day to grab any of those Debbie cakes that you wanted for your family. So I was constantly bringing home big shopping bags full of free Debbie cakes. And my dad loved that because he loved Little Debbie's. So, yeah. And the same thing with Brock and Brock Confections. They made candy. And so I was constantly bringing home free candy, like free gummy bears and free jelly beans and all that kind of stuff. My dad always loved that too because he liked it. He didn't care for like more fruity stuff like Jolly Ranchers or that kind of stuff, but he liked chocolates and things like that, butterscotch. So I was constantly bringing him free candy home. He really liked any job that I worked at where I got to get him free shit. So, he liked when I worked at Farmore because when I worked at Farmore, I could get him free movie rentals. So, he always appreciated my early working years. 7th, I'll do you one better. In a kitchen where I worked, we had a severely autistic gay dishwasher who tried to kiss all the dudes that worked there. I had that same friend that I had who got me the job at the Pizza Hut place. He spent a couple of years working at a home for mentally disabled people outside of Chattanooga. I think it was called Open Arms Care or something like that. And so it was his job to keep track of them, keep them out of trouble, bathe them, that kind of thing. And he had some stories about things that happened there that I'm not going to repeat, but I've never worked at Walmart. 8th worked at Walmart for about 3 months, and he worked there long enough to earn all the money he needed to build the PC he wanted to build, and then the minute he finished building it, he quit. So, he didn't hate that job. He actually quite liked it because he said it was extremely easy and everyone was really impressed with him, so it made his job super easy and they let him get away with everything. But he decided that he didn't want to go back to work until he was out of high school because it was too much of a pain to... He basically didn't have any free time because he was either doing homework or he was at work. Do you like music from the 80s because you grew up in that time, or do you actually think it's superior compared to other eras? 80s music is definitely better than what we have now because what we have now is just terrible. There's some modern stuff that comes out, but a lot of the best stuff that comes out nowadays doesn't come from the U.S. It comes from overseas. It comes from Sweden and whatnot. Like some of the best metal bands coming out nowadays are in Sweden. They're not here. And they sing in English. But, 80s, it's not just, there was music in the 90s that I liked. There was music in the early 2000s that I liked. It wasn't until we got to Fall Out Boy and Imagine Dragons and crap like that is when everything started to go to hell. And now we just have awful, terrible music. It's really just it. And I'm not saying that all music that comes out nowadays is terrible. Like I said, there's some new bands. Pop punk is starting to have kind of a resurgence. Although there's this really weird thing going on where pop punk is starting to blend into new modern rap. So you've got these new modern rappers that actually do pop punk stuff and Breaking Benjamin style nu metal along with their rap. And so that's kind of interesting that those genres are kind of blending in together. And I would say it's because the people doing that were kids that grew up in the early 2000s when you had the pop punk movement and you had hip hop hitting really big, and then you had bands like Breaking Benjamin and whatnot hitting really big. And so they were surrounded by those three genres, and they've just kind of melded them into their own thing now that they're adults. And it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. So I'm not saying all music is terrible, but the stuff that they play on the top 40, the new radio stuff, it's all trash. All of it is trash. It doesn't even sound like rock music anymore. And hip hop doesn't even sound like hip hop anymore. It's just this bland stuff that has no heart or meaning to it. Everything just starts to sound the same, and it sucks. And I mean, you're going to have that whenever there's a popular genre. I mean, a lot of the 80s hair metal bands sounded similar to each other. But then you had the big standouts. You had the Bon Jovis, you had the Def Leppards, you had the Metallicas, you know? You had all these different, which, of course, Metallica wasn't a hair metal band, but you get what I'm saying. There were standout bands, and then you had the also-rans back in the background. But now they don't even have any standouts. It all just sounds like the same trash. What's the best national fast food pizza chain? Well, I've recently had Domino's, and it was okay. To me, Papa John's is only good if you drown it in that garlic sauce that they pack in with it. So really, as far as the national chains, I gotta say Pizza Hut, but my preference is to go to a really, really good local chain. Like we've got a one up the street that's called Nicky's, and they do Italian style or New York style pizza. They do New York style. It's tremendous. It's very good. They're not Italian though. The people that work there are Greek, but they make Italian style pizza, and it's awesome. I mean, shit, New York style pizza, and it's awesome. I haven't had it in a long while though. I've been meaning to go back, but with the COVID stuff, I don't even know if they're open or not. It's been that long since I've been out there. Who do you think was the hottest main girl in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre films? Stretch. Always Stretch. Carolyn Williams. Oh my God. I've met her in person. Flirted with her in person. That's why the photo I got from her says 7th, you naughty boy. She was awesome in person. Loved her to death. And I mean, she's on up in years now, but I would. Yep. No hesitation. Absolutely. Jump at the chance. Did you ever play the arcade games there? Well, of course I did. Thoughts on Soulja Boy's new console? It's just another Chinese knockoff like all the other ones were. 7th, do you think my Joy-Con controllers will exhaust or damage their batteries if I always keep my Joy-Cons charging on the Switch? That might have been the way it was back in the day. I don't think it's going to cause you that many problems now because batteries are a little bit different, but how's your week been? Been okay. Did you hear they want to do Coming to America? No, I hadn't heard that. What you're saying sounds just like the gaming industry right now. Do not like the chat in the main window. Some dumbass questions come through, and I really don't want them shoved in my face. Sorry about that. No one seems to really care if this is up there or not anyway, so it's not that big a deal. I can always turn it off like that. No one really seemed to be paying attention or cared whether that was on the screen or not, Jeff. So if I appreciate you. I'll turn it off. But you know how it is, Jeff. Unless it's a political question or an asinine trolling question, I try to answer everything that gets popped into my chat. It's just the way it go. Look at this. You see this right here? See this little red mark? Right. Man, I'm in reverse. Right there. See that little red mark on my face right there? That's the first zit that I've had since I was like 20, 21 on my face. I've gotten like one on my shoulder or whatnot every now and again, but That's the first one I've had on my face in decades. I don't know where that came from or why. Kind of weird. Seventh, was that Pizza Hut job your worst, or was there a worse job? Oh, I've had plenty of worse experiences than that. Plenty of worse experiences than that. I worked one day for a telemarketer, and I hated it so much that I walked out 2 hours after I started. And it was one of those things where you were like calling people and selling coupon books. Oh, it was insufferable. Like I said, I only lasted 2 hours. Seventh, I watched a documentary on the Exorcist film. It might be just as unsettling as the film itself. Was it one? Was it the? It was about the making of the movie. Yeah, there's some weird stuff that went on during the making of that film. If you wanna watch an interesting one, there's one that's called My Amityville Horror, and it's about one of the grown-up kids that actually lived in the house. I mean, some of the stuff that he says is really out there, so I think there's some issues up here, but it's still a really interesting documentary. Best and worst game so far this gen. Too early in the gen to get into that, man, because most of the stuff that's come out, it's just ported up last gen stuff. Like, Assassin's Creed is fine and dandy, but it doesn't feel like a next gen game outside of its visuals. 1 hour warning time. Oh, Lord, here we go. Where is my 1 hour? There we go. Remaining. We just got our first donation of the night, $5. So we are $45 from the 10 o'clock goal. So thank you, Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. Well, thanks for answering all my stupid questions. I'm going to go watch Alexis, Texas now. Have a good night, everyone. Okay, thank you, Horseman. Come on, there are too many stupid questions and comments sometimes. I can shut the chat window. I got you. I may be lost. What he's asking about J.A. Allen, Jeff. He's asking if that was your real name or if that was the name of your band, was what he was asking. Is Xbox One X worse than Xbox One? No, it's an improvement. But it's the same games. Oily residue from lack of running water? That could be. It could be from where, I wasn't able to take a shower because of the no running water. So maybe I had some oil buildup on my skin. That's certainly possible. I gotta go. I'm sorry, Shadow. I gotta stick with Stretch, man, because Stretch felt like an actual character and not just a character that was there to show off her legs and stuff. She was a great final girl, Really, really loved her character, and she's just a really cool person in person too. The worst one to me, the one with Matthew McConaughey in it. Do you think longevity of the DualSense with the triggers will hold, or there'll be an upgraded version? I think it'll be refined. I don't think they'll call it like the DualSense 2 or anything. I think they'll just make refinements to how it's manufactured over time. Seventh, the Nintendo Switch Pro going to have Switch Pro exclusive. I don't know. I don't even know if it's really happening or not. I mean, this isn't the first time they've said it's coming. Are you looking forward to the final Halloween movie this fall? Not especially. Not especially. The last one was okay, but it wasn't mind-blowing by any stretch of the imagination. Was Texas Chainsaw Massacre Next Generation supposed to be horror comedy? I think it was supposed to be a straight up horror film, and it just ended up seeming like a comedy. At least with Evil Dead 2, you knew that they were going for horror comedy. You know, there was no doubt on that one. But with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Next Generation, I think they were trying to do a legit horror film and they just failed real bad and instead made fodder for Mystery Science Theater. Worst celebrity you ever met, Jake the Snake Roberts. But I can't be too mean to him because at the time that I met him was when he was living with Jake the Snake Roberts and was trying to get clean. And so, he was going through a lot when I met him at that time. And, I've seen videos of him meeting fans and whatnot, and he's like a totally different person than the guy that I met at that convention that day. So, when I met him, he was kind of a dick, but he had a reason to be a dick, so I don't hold it against him. I'd like to meet him again someday. What was the dumbest horror film you've ever watched? Probably this movie that was kind of a wanted to be a Freddy Krueger-ish type of thing. It was made by Full Moon or whatever, the Charles Band company that made the Puppet Master movies, and it was called Killjoy, and it was a horror movie with a mostly black cast, and I guess he was supposed to be kind of like Freddy Krueger for black horror fans, I guess. And he was a killer clown named Killjoy the Clown or something like that. And it was just not good. It was more cheesy than it was scary, It was like watching one of the way later Freddy sequels, but with an even smaller budget. And it was just dumb. It was just dumb. Do you remember Matthew McConaughey's Tusken Raider impression? It made me laugh so hard. I think I remember the scene you're talking about, but again, I haven't seen it in 20 years or so. Something like that. What are your thoughts on Dying Light? Are you looking forward to the sequel? Dying Light's gameplay is fine, but the thing I didn't like about it was it plays more or less the same as Dead Island or whatever, but it doesn't have the sense of humor. It played it straight, and so I didn't find the story as interesting because it didn't have all that humor in it. Will you revive Retro Wednesday sporadically? I intend to. That's why I got all the upgraded equipment for that. It's just the fact that lately work has kept me from doing it. Work is kicking my ass a lot more than it has in previous years. And so, it's impeded my free time to work on videos. It's impeded my free time to stream. There are days where, I argue with myself over whether or not I want to do the 7thCast because it's going to take away 3 hours of what little free time I have to myself. And, there's been instances, of course, where I physically couldn't stream. But there are some days where even when I don't have anything that's impeding the 7thCast, I argue with myself, do I really want to sit in that chair for 3 hours tonight and possibly 6 hours tonight? But I end up doing it anyway. I don't think they'll do exclusive. Did you like the remake of It? How does it compare to the Curry version? I liked the first part of it a lot. Didn't like the second part as much. I think they should have just made it one big massive movie and taken part 2 and cut it up in the middle of part 1. So it was, you were getting some of part 1, then some of part 2, then some of part 1, then some of part 2, because that's the way the book's written. And I've heard rumors that they're going to make some super master cut that's cut that way. That might make it a lot better. But part 2 just on its own kind of stank. As far as the Tim Curry version is corny as hell because it's a made-for-TV movie. Tim Curry is awesome in it, and he's hilarious in it, but it's not scary. It wasn't even scary when it was new because it feels exactly like what it is, a made-for-TV movie. And made-for-TV movies, 9 times out of 10, you enjoy them when when you first time you watch them, but then you watch them years later and you're like, ugh. Like the original miniseries of The Stand. It's just, ugh. And I didn't even watch the one that they made for CBS or whatever because it just didn't look good to me. I feel like The Stand should have gotten the full big budget theatrical treatment, and instead it's just another miniseries. And I didn't see people talking about it, either applauding it or hating it. There just wasn't really any conversation going on about it at all. So I felt at the time, well, that's probably tells you everything you need to know about that one. And I certainly wasn't going to subscribe to CBS just to watch that, because the only other thing they had was Star Trek Discovery and Picard, and both of those, I watched, one free episode each of those and knew that, watching that garbage wasn't enough reason to pay another subscription fee. I've seen Carrie and both remakes and the sequel. I've seen every Carrie movie that's been made, and the first one is the only one worth a damn. I mean, there were scenes of the remake, the most recent remake with what's her name from Kick-Ass, that was okay. But for the most part, it was just kind of an unneeded sequel. I mean, sure, the original is dated because it was made in the 70s, but it's still just as good now as it was the day it came out. It's just some of the clothes and the hairstyles and whatnot date the movie. There's a rumor of a sly remake to PS5 like Insane Trilogy. We'll see. We'll see. Have you ever read the book, It? Yeah, the first time I ever read it, I was in middle school. They had it in the library, believe it or not. And I read it all in one day because I selected it as my book to do a book report. And so I called it. I stayed home sick from school that day, and I got up at 6 in the morning, and I read that book cover to cover by 8 p.m. that night. I'm a fairly fast reader, and so I finished the book. The next morning during homeroom, I wrote my entire book report during homeroom, and so then by the time I got to English class, I turned it in, got an A. Do you feel Mist 2005 is underrated? Yeah, that's a great movie. I have not watched the miniseries that they made of it, so I don't know if that's any good, but the 2005 movie is great. Does the presence of a well-known actor ever take you out of a movie experience? There's been some instances, but for the most part, not really. Thoughts on the film Stand By Me? It's a good movie. And I think I think it has stood the test of time. I think it's aged very well. I don't think that's a movie that ever needs to be remade. Have you read the original Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? Yes, I have. There was some nasty CP in the IT book, I hear. Yeah, well, I wouldn't really call it CP per se, because it's all kids that are the same age that are getting the nasty on. If you were of that mental inclination, I could see you, enjoying that particular part of the book, but it's not done in a overly graphic way. It's more like dialogue. It's more like what the characters are saying to each other while it's going on, as opposed to giving any great detail of what's happening. But it's basically a bunch of 12-year-olds engaging in a gangbang down in the sewer, is what it is. Certainly would have gotten Stephen King canceled if he wrote it today. It's a weird scene. It doesn't really feel like it adds anything to the story. He has said on multiple occasions that he was like a combination of drunk and stoned when writing that book, so maybe that had something to do with it. But when I go back and reread it, I get to that section and I just Yeah, I flipped past it. And it's not like a really long scene. It's maybe a page and like maybe half a page or something. It's not a very long scene. So I just, nope. Misery is a very good adaptation, but I would have to go with either Shawshank Redemption or The Green Mile. Although, although, I really love John Carpenter's Christine. It's not true to the book by any stretch of the imagination, but I love it just the same. I love it for the soundtrack. I love it for the acting. I love it for the effects. And especially not just like the old 50s music that it has in it, which I grew up listening to because my dad loved that stuff and my grandmother loved it too. But John Carpenter's soundtrack, that's probably my favorite John Carpenter soundtrack. I even like it better than Halloween. And I said this a couple of weeks ago. That's one of the albums that I bought Eighth for Christmas for his record player, was the soundtrack to Christine, because I think it's that good. Do you think Horizon 2 will get Game of the Year? Well, let's just see if it actually comes out this year first. I mean, they say it will, but let's just see. Would it really get him canceled? Cuties came out last year. But yeah, but Cuties didn't have any gangbangs in it, Raymond. Do you think killing of Nancy from Nightmare on Elm Street was a mistake? Yeah, kinda. You know, she could have been the anchor for all the sequels that would have given it a little bit more gravitas, so it wasn't so much of just a comedy with some creative death scenes. What's your least favorite movie adaptation? The Lawnmower Man. It was nothing like the Stephen King short story at all. The only thing it had in common with the short story was its name, and that there was a scene that mentioned a guy being killed in the bird bath. Those are the only two things that it took from the actual short story. That's why Stephen King hated it so much. Forrest Gump or Shawshank Redemption, which is better? Shawshank. The Mist was a novella too, yes. It was not a full book, it was a novella. A good novella, but a novella nonetheless. I can't remember which one it was from. It might have been different seasons. It might have been the same one that had might have been the same one that had Shawshank Redemption in it. I'm not an apt pupil, which I think was different seasons. It might have been that one. I can't really remember now. I used to have all of his books in hardback, but I sold them years ago. Yes, I heard about the game director on Hogwarts. I don't know if he was the game director or one of the game's directors, but I heard about it. I heard about it. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I don't know if I'm going to keep this or not, because it's kind of starting to look like a bushy version of Keemstar's beard, but gray. So I don't know if I'm going to keep it. Oh, wait a minute. Magic powers. I don't know if I'm going to keep it. I might just shave it off. Seventh, what was the highest position you've had at a job? I was a manager at one place. And then the job I have now, I started out as a level 1 analyst. Even though I was overqualified for that job, I needed the money at the time. And I've moved my way up the company over the years to where now I'm like in a, I guess you could say it was a senior analyst position. I'm considered the lead over my team. Do you think Neil Druckmann is going to get canceled next? If he screws up somehow. Just depends. He hasn't done anything that warrants a canceling at this point. You know, if he ends up being some kind of a sex pest or something, then yeah, he'll get the can. But we'll just see. All this cancel culture stuff is why I've been trying to keep away from social media. Everything's offensive nowadays. Yeah, it's reminding me of the 90s. It's reminding me of that 1991-92 era going into 1993. You know, the way everything was before Clinton got his knob polished in the Oval Office with the PMRC and, the tipper stickers and all that kind of stuff. And PC, 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 it wasn't SJW or, social justice. It was political correctness is what they called it back then. And is the same stuff that was going on now. It's just that now, because of social media, you hear it a whole lot more than you used to. We didn't have social media back then, so these people that would get up in arms about all this stuff, the only time you ever heard anything from them is when they were protesting something and it was covered on the news. Otherwise, you never heard about any of this stuff going on. It was still going on. It just didn't have as big of a platform because there was no Twitter, there was no Facebook, there was no YouTube. But it was the same kind of stuff. And then, Clinton got his knob polished in the Oval Office and was impeached over it, and everything went away for a while, and it didn't really come back till around 2012 to 2014, somewhere around in there. Seventh, this all reminds me of the euphemisms that George Carlin would make fun of. Yeah. George Carlin was he was certainly not a fan of Republicans. He wasn't a conservative by any stretch of the imagination, but he also was not a fan of political correctness or what you would now call social justice stuff. He was. He told the story about how there was no such thing as a topic that was too offensive to joke about. It was all in the delivery. So as the example he gave is that normally you wouldn't be able to tell a joke about rape, but then if you do a joke about Elmer Fudd raping Porky Pig, there becomes a gray area. This is what George Carlin said. I didn't say it. This is what George Carlin said. And so, he spoke out a lot about censorship and political correctness and things like that. And, he was a pretty politically incorrect guy as it was. Adam Sessler. That man was a crackhead. I don't know if he is now. I have not watched any of the new G4 stuff or anything. But that man was a straight up crackhead. He did one interview at an E3, and it was during that period after G4 had died, and he was jonesing on camera. And his hand was just shaking on his knee, and he was stammering, and he was like just, completely coked out of his mind. He was either like super jacked up on coke, or he was jonesing for a hit of it. One of the two. He was messed up. Enough said. I turned The Last of Us 2 after I heard the phrase bigot sandwich. Well, that was pretty early in the game there, Big Papa. Clinton was actually impeached for lying under oath. Yeah, lying about getting his knob polished in the Oval Office, so it's the same thing. When you go back and watch the impeachment trial, it's all about him getting his knob polished. They bring out Monica Lewinsky's dress and show the spooge stain on it and read him transcripts of Lewinsky's testimony talking about how he fingered her with a cigar and stuff. I mean, that whole trial, it was all about that was more screen time given to a blowjob than at any point in non-porn history. Are you worried about accounts being wiped off the internet by Twitter, Google, etc., sometimes in tandem? It's going to come and go in waves, man. I'm not all that concerned about it affecting me directly, like my own accounts, because that's the whole reason why. That's one of, well, not the whole reason, but that's one of the reasons why I avoid those kind of topics for the most part. Partly because it doesn't interest me to talk about those things. I want to talk about movies and games and stuff like that. But also because, I'm not stupid. You have the potential of either getting canceled by one side or canceled by the other. And I've never been one to really espouse my opinions about political topics too much one way or the other anyway, because like I said, it just doesn't interest me. I've never voted. I have no interest in ever voting. So, what's your opinion of Michael Pachter as an analyst? He sucks at it. I mean, right off the top of my head, I can't think of a single prediction he's made that has been right. What was the scariest part of Dr. Giggles? I couldn't tell you. The movie was so terrible, I only watched it once, and that was 20-something years ago. I bet you Clinton was so humiliated. His wife might have been humiliated. I don't think Bill cared at all. I really don't think Bill cared all that much, aside from the fact that it took up so much of his time sitting and testifying about that stuff. The most ignorant fanboy that you've encountered. JTech TV. Does 8th like Super Mario Sunshine? I don't really know. I don't think he does. Maybe he does. I don't know. I mean, we have the original on GameCube, and then he has, the recent re-release on the Switch. What was the worst thing a gaming company has ever done? Boy, that's a long stretch there, man. That's a long stretch there. I don't know if I could tell you the absolute worst thing a single company has ever done. One of them would definitely be Microsoft knowingly releasing a faulty console, that being the 360, and causing the Red Ring of Death issue and screwing over millions of people that bought it. Another thing would be Nintendo's licensing exclusivity contracts for the NES third-party publishers in the United States. So all these great games that were made in Japan for the Sega Master System couldn't be released in the United States because of those contracts. So it was like they held third-party publishers hostage in the United States. I mean, sure, to some extent it protected the NES from suffering the same fate as the 2600, in that the system wasn't flooded with garbage, but there was still a lot of garbage that still made it on it. All they really did was basically monopolize the U.S. market, almost, not quite, to where the Sega Master System wasn't all that competitive. It wasn't a full monopoly because, of course, the Sega Master System did come out. The Sega Master System had some great games, but it wasn't the success that the Genesis was. But by the time the Genesis rolled out, a lot of these companies that made exclusive games for Nintendo had grown in their success to where they could make unique games for both systems. So, for Capcom, they were still putting out, Mega Man and Disney games on NES, but at the same time, they were putting out games like Strider and whatnot on the Genesis. Because they had grown well enough to where they had development teams that could put out exclusive titles on both systems. And so that kind of ended, with the 16-bit generation, it kind of ended NES's software dominance in the United States console market. What about Konami? Who do you think is the best game reviewer? I don't really watch a whole lot of game reviewers, to be honest with you. I watch more of the comedy reviewer guys like Angry Video Game Nerd. I don't watch a whole lot of the serious ones. The ones that just do a straight up plain Jane review, I don't really watch those guys. I watch guys that inject a lot of personality and humor and even storylines and skits and what into their reviews, like AVGN, guys like that. Will we ever see another Castlevania game? We won't see one that was made in-house by Konami. Probably not. I fully suspect they'll license Castlevania out to another developer, though. Worst Halloween film you've seen? What was the name of that movie? The one with Ludacris or whoever it was in it. That one was terrible. The one that came out after Halloween H2O. Hard 8 versus Black Baron and a verbal. You've said that already. What is it you're wanting me to say about that comment? You've posted that twice. It's not a question. Why did Sega give up and go third party? They gave up because they weren't making any money. They were in a financial bind. They couldn't financially support having hardware on the market anymore. They were losing money off of the Dreamcast. And so they went to strict software development because that was a way to right the ship and get them back into the black. They were on the verge of shutting down as a business. They were very close to it. Konami being the worst game. Yeah, but they're not really a gaming company anymore. Not really. They're more like a pachinko company now. Do you like Angry Joe? Angry Joe's not bad. I've never met him in person, so I don't know what he's like in a person. I just know what other people that have interacted with him have said. But as far as his videos go, I like him all right. What is your least favorite winter holiday movie? Probably Four Christmases. I just really don't like that movie at all. I just really don't like that movie at all. Do you think Sega will ever return? No. I kind of doubt it. Not in any big major level. You know, they may come out with like some mini systems, like a Dreamcast Mini or something like that. But as far as like the Dreamcast 2 or whatever, no, I don't think it'll ever happen. Does Solid Rev have good points on hard drive space? I don't think I've watched the video you're talking about. How is Konami still even around? Because they make money. They're just making money through other means. They're not making money off of video games. Not really. Aside from licensing stuff. Like merchandise. For their brands. You know, Metal Gear action figures and t-shirts and stuff like that. We've got 30 minutes left, folks. We've got 30 minutes and we've made one $5 donation. And that was a super chat donation. So currently there's like, that puts it up to like $42 in that account. So there's another $60 that has to be added to that account before I even get a payout from it. And even then, YouTube will keep 30% of it. Really, the Streamlabs link is the way to go. Streamlabs link is the way to go. Do you like the Meet the Fockers films? I liked the first one all right. The sequels were just bad. Do you believe in the afterlife? Yes. Does your religion have an influence on which one you believe in, or is it based on your own convictions? It's a mixture of both. It is a mixture of both. Have you ever encountered fake intellectuals, people using big words and they have no idea what they mean? Yeah, all the time. All the time. Do you think YouTube will ever go back to the no? It's never going to go back to the way it was when the Trey Brotherhood was running it on all cylinders. It'll never go back to that. Do you watch Joe Rogan? I don't watch the full podcast. I watch clips of it that get posted on YouTube or used to get posted on YouTube. But I don't actually watch the full cast or listen to it or whatever. The more things change, the more they say the same. Not in the case of YouTube. YouTube just gets worse year by year. Every year it's a little bit worse than it was the year before. Have you ever driven a motorcycle? Absolutely not. Not once. Have you ever ate at a White Castle? No. I used to eat at Crystal all the time. But that's not exactly the same thing. They look the same, but they don't taste the same. 7th, I miss the old YouTube channel design layouts. I do too. As well as the video response option. I do too. And the 5-star rating system. I do too. Have you ever heard of YouTube knockoff websites that try to use the old layout? No. I have not. No. Not run into that. Tomorrow I actually have to do some extracurricular work stuff. There was a couple of tickets for some security changes that I needed to implement, and I didn't get time to do it on Friday, so I'm going to have to clock some time. And then hopefully I'll be able to work on an actual video. It's not a review or anything. It's just an unboxing video of all the stuff that Jeff sent me a couple of weeks ago. I've got all the footage recorded. I just need to put it all together. I hated YouTube's Cosmic Panda layout where it was all silver. I don't remember that one. What do you think is at Area 51? Nothing. Anything that was at Area 51, if there ever was anything there, aside from top secret plane, experimental airplanes, has been moved out of that facility to somewhere else because it's got too much public awareness now. Have you ever played Wild Guns on SNES? No, but I'm fairly confident that I played it at the arcade once. There's only one reason why I can understand why YouTube would change the layout. People would make the text and background the same color, preventing people from seeing it. Yeah, well. 7th, are you going to give Tom Holland and Marky Mark a chance in the Uncharted? Well, I'll watch it. Certainly I'll watch it. What anime disappointed you the most? I don't know. I hate it when you have a really great first season and then the second season becomes like more of a comedy soap opera. So there's not any of the epic battles and anything that happened in the first season. It's all just like a day in the life of episodes. I hate that crap. And I'm not going to cite any examples because it's happened so many times. Do you think extraterrestrials have ever visited Earth? Not in the type of extraterrestrials that you're thinking of. My most disappointed anime was One Punch Man Season 2. That's a good example. Season 2 sucked. Animation wasn't good because it wasn't as good because it was done by a different company. It was based on the manga, of course, but in the issues of the manga that they covered, Saitama wasn't really doing a whole lot because he was obsessed with winning that stupid karate tournament while all the real action was taking place with all the B characters. And I understand that, that was cool in the fact that it further developed the characters of the supporting characters. And, maybe the writer was thinking, there's only so much that I can do with this guy that can defeat everybody with one punch. But still, the core of the show is supposed to be Saitama, and he just didn't really have a whole lot to do in season 2. Do you think Tobey Maguire Spider-Verse villain will be the sinister? The wording of your question doesn't make a lot of sense, Master Millions. Are you asking if Tobey Maguire is going to be a villain, or are you asking if Tobey Maguire versions of the Sinister Six characters are going to be the villains in the next Spider-Man movie? Need to work on your wording of the question, son. Do you think life from Mars seeded life on Earth via asteroid? I don't really buy into all that, no. What I think, as far as Mars goes, is that Mars used to be similar to Earth, and it became the way it is now because there used to be another planet, and that planet exploded, and the explosion of that planet destroyed the ecosystem of Mars and turned it into the barren wasteland that it is now. And the remnants of that planet is what's currently the asteroid belt in our solar system. That's as far as I'll go as far as speculating on any of that shit. Do you think Jared Leto will do a better job at Joker this time? Well, we only have to wait about 10 days to find out. It's true Mars had 3 moons. I don't know. I'm not an astronomer. I think Andrew Garfield was a good Spider-Man, just had a horrible script. Yeah, he didn't have a good script to work with. He was a good Spider-Man, but a crappy Peter Parker. Tobey Maguire was the other way around. He was a great Peter Parker, but a crappy Spider-Man to some extent because of the fact that he didn't have a lot of the banter with the villains. Andrew Garfield got the banter right. Do you think Twilight Zone has aged well despite being an old black and white show? It's a by-episode thing. Some of the episodes have aged worse than the others. Do you still consider Pluto a planet? Yes. Would you ever want to go to Antarctica? Not especially. 20 minutes left, folks. We got 20 minutes left, and we're $45 short of the $50 goal. I don't think it's going to happen tonight. I don't think it's going to happen. Our viewership's been down, too. Mars and Venus was like Earth, Venus, atmosphere. Mars and Venus was like Earth, Venus's atmosphere. You're going to have to learn to use commas, man. Mars and Venus was like Earth. Venus's atmosphere died because the sun grew bigger. Mars' atmosphere was too thin. Well, I don't really care about Venus, but I'm sticking to there was an additional planet that blew up and destroyed Mars' atmosphere or ecosystem. I'm going to stick with that theory because the remnants of that explosion is still floating around in our solar system now. Did you like 1,000 Ways to Die in the West? No. I agree, 7th. I think Tom Holland's the best because he balanced it. Well, he's been the best Spider-Man, but the scripts have been not the best. I mean, think about it. We've had 2 films now, and they don't even mention Uncle Ben. Not once. The name Uncle Ben has not been mentioned once in either of those Spider-Man movies. Think about that. My favorite black and white movie is Arsenic and Old Lace. Maybe because it was the only black and white movie I ever watched. Okay. Okay, then. Never seen the original Frankenstein. Never seen the original Dracula, the Wolfman, the Mummy. Really? Wow. We will never be able to go to Mars. Why do you think that? 7th, do you think they'll make Tobey Maguire Tom Holland's Uncle Ben? I doubt it. We'll see, but I doubt it. That doesn't seem to be the direction they're going in. From the rumors that have been circulating around. Mercury is closer to the sun, but ironically Venus is hotter than Mercury because it's made of horrible sun-attracted matter on it. Did you know water was found on Mars? I knew that traces of water had been found, but not like, flowing rivers or anything. My favorite arsenic and old lace character is Teddy. Okay, I haven't seen that movie, Darkstar. Are you looking forward to the game Evil West? I'm not familiar with what that is. Do you remember Pentagon sneakily traveled UFO last year? Dude, are you typing one-handed? What the hell? I don't know what you're talking about with Pentagon sneakily traveled UFO last year. I know they released some footage of an unidentified flying object. That's all I know about. Evil West is a combination of Red Dead and Van Helsing. Hadn't heard anything about it. Hadn't seen a trailer, no gameplay footage, nothing. That's a new one on me. Eighth might know about it. I'll ask him about it later on. Da, da, da. Do. I think Willem Dafoe should come back as Green Goblin. I don't know, man. I don't know. There's always the chance of spoiling a good thing doing that. Plus, he died. And you couldn't do him as a vision of Harry, a vision that Harry's having, because Harry died. I think those triangular prism monoliths are a prank. They're not a prank, they're just an art project. Some independent artist. That's all it is. Do you think a Red Dead Redemption film could work? Sure, if anyone gave a crap about making good big budget westerns anymore, which they don't. The guy who played Ice Cream Man plays golf 150 times a year. Plays golf? You're talking about Clint Howard, the brother of Ron Howard. Seventh, if aliens truly existed and were responsible behind cattle mutilations, what do you think could be the reason? Free milk or the properties of them, such as carbon? If that kind of thing was going on, it'd probably just be that that they were just dissecting them, experimenting on them, learning about the life forms living on this planet, kind of thing. And since there's such a huge cattle industry, there's massive amounts of cattle spread across the U.S. for them to do such experiments on. So it'd be an easy target because they're out wandering around in the grass. The pasture. Humans live in homes, so they're not out wandering around out in the open at night for the most part. And so a cow would be an easy thing for them to zip their little flying saucer down at night without being spotted too much. Cutting one open, looking at its guts, and then flying away. Hypothetically. How much do you like the Resident Evil Evil franchise? What was your reaction when Resident Evil 4 came out with all the changes? Well, again, I'm not a big fan of survival horror, so I didn't really care that much one way or the other. We haven't even been back to the moon yet. Yeah, we're going to have to go back to the moon before we can go to Mars, because wherever in the current plan that I've seen, the trip to Mars would be launched from a base on the moon, not from Earth. So, first they'd have to get back to the moon, build a base on the moon so that they could launch from the moon. That's going to take a lot of work. Unless Elon Musk has some other plans and he plans to launch straight from Earth. I don't know. The last plan I saw was building a base on the moon and then launching to Mars from the moon. Do you like the film Legion? Yes. And in fact, I've been lately hankering to rewatch it. Do you like the film The Crazies? I like the original. I don't like the remake. Favorite Rob Zombie horror movie? The first one, House of a Thousand Corpses. Haven't liked any of the others he's made. Well, I mean, the third one in the Devil's Reject trilogy, I guess you could call it, was okay, but it was still in that 70s exploitation road crime movie more than it was House of a Thousand Corpses. House of a Thousand Corpses at least was trying to be an actual horror film that was heavily inspired by Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1 and 2, as opposed to 70s exploitation film, which is what The Devil's Rejects and the third movie were. If poltergeists are real, do you think scientists could use them to make zero-point energy gravity guns like in Half-Life? I don't know. I'll ask me some weird shit sometimes. Do you have an example of a movie that could be considered an Eastern as opposed to a Western? You mean like, are you talking about like an Asian film that has a cowboy kind of story to it? Sure. Most of the movies that Kurosawa ever made. If you're talking about a Western style movie that mostly took place in the East, like the East of the United States, that's a little harder to come by, but basically any of the Civil War movies, whether it be, Johnny Shiloh to North and South or The Blue and the Gray and all that kind of stuff. And then you can get into more relatively modern stuff like Cold Mountain or that movie that Tom Cruise made, Far and Away, although that one eventually makes it out west at the end. What do you think's the mystery behind crop circles? Mysterious old men with nothing better to do. 7th, would you ever own any potential military craft for collector's purposes? No, I don't have a place to put them. Did you like the movie Green Mile? Very much so. Do you like Interstellar? It was okay. It wasn't anything mind-blowing to me. Do you think currently Demon Souls is the best PS5 game? As of right now, probably yeah. Attack on Titan anime quality, all seasons episodes get an A+. Okay. Legions was a weird film to me, but I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yes. Now, keep in mind, I'm talking about the one with Paul Bettany where he's an angel. 7th, did you play Curse of the Moon 2? But not as of yet. Did you like the film Hotel Rwanda? I don't think I've ever watched it. Will we ever see an No, I don't think so. I do not think so. 12 minutes left, folks. 12 minutes left. What movie did you want to see based on the name of the movie? Lesbian Vampire Killers. Lesbian Vampire Killers. It's a funny horror comedy. I saw it years ago. And I saw the title and I'm like, I'm watching that tonight. Thoughts on Michael Clark Duncan as Kingpin? I liked him as Kingpin. It was the rest of the movie that was the problem. Did you like Inception? I actually liked Inception better than Interstellar. 8th is the opposite. He likes Interstellar better than Inception. He doesn't like Inception at all. Did you like Deadpool? Absolutely. Are you looking forward to Indiana Jones 5? No! When I first heard of the movie called The Room, I thought it was supposed to be a psychological horror movie. I thought so too. Especially with that poster with him giving you like the Stanley Kubrick view, the whole... I thought it was going to be about some serial killer that would drag his victims to a room and kill them in this, the killing room, the red room kind of thing, and based on that poster, and that's not what it was at all. I'm back to seeing Coming to America. Yeah, it was boring as hell. Some funny moments. But exactly. Do you think Jupiter's moon Europa has potential life? It has 2 times more fresh water, has ocean volcanoes. You never know. We won't know until we can land something there. Do you think Matrix 4 should have been a TV series instead? I don't know, because they haven't even shown a trailer for it yet. Why did you watch Bible Black back in the day? I only watched a couple minutes of it. Somebody sent me a link to it and said, here's an anime you need to watch. And I clicked on it, and it opened up, and I was watching it, and a student went into it was the first episode, and a student went into the nurse's office at their school, and suddenly the nurse cast some kind of spell on herself and grew a dick, and I was like, nope, and I turned it off. Haha, what a story, Mark. I did not. It's bullshit. I did not. How did that movie with your cameo coming along? It's still in the editing post-production process. They were supposed to have filmed some additional pickup scenes last weekend. I haven't talked to Billy, so I don't know how that went. Have you ever watched any of the Russ Myers movies? I don't know, because I don't know who Russ Myers is. One of my college professors thought Human Centipede was supposed to be a superhero movie. I can understand that. Have you seen Playing with Fire with John Cena? Isn't that like a kid's movie about firemen or something? I saw the poster for it and I was like, nah. Did you like Return of the Living Dead 3? Is that the one with the girl? I rewatched that not too long ago. It's not horrible, but it's not great either. Would you entertain playing retro throwback style games on Retro Wednesday? Or will you just be playing Raspberry Pi emulated oldies? Well, currently that's the only way that I can stream retro. I have all these systems, but I don't have a way to stream them. It's not RetroPie though. It's called Super Console X or something. It's a thing I ordered from China a while back, but it is emulation. It's just not a RetroPie. Have a nice night, 7th. Okay. Did you like the TV series Oz? Yeah. Do you like Jeepers Creepers? I liked it until I found out what the director was like. And you've asked me about that before already, Shadow Deist. You've asked me about Oz before too. What was your first video game experience with voice acting? None, because I've never performed voice acting in a video game. The first game that I played where there was voice actors in it, that I recall, was on PC, and it was I want to say it was the 7thCast. The first one I can remember on console that had any significant voice acting in it was Lunar on the Sega CD. Later, Juggernauts. Do you want someone to edit a WWE wrestling match with John Cena against a random opponent and make it look like John Cena really is invisible? Can't say that interests me, Darkstar. That's kind of a weird question. Thoughts on the Wii? It was a gimmick. It was an underpowered gimmick. There's a couple of good games on it, but that's about as far as it goes. Do you think Xbox Series X will outsell the PS5 in the US? Just go by your hunch. Not so far. Things could change, but not so far. Do you like the Metal Slug games, and how do they hold up with Contra? I like the Metal Slug games, but I don't feel they move as fast as Contra does. So I still like Contra better. Did you like the color version of Night of the Living Dead? Oh, the one that Tom Savini directed back in like 1990? Yeah, it wasn't too bad. It was pretty good. Better than, it got credit for. Who is your favorite wrestler? Roddy Piper. Sony is trying to release PSVR 2 this holiday. I think they should wait till next year. I haven't heard anything about them trying to release it this holiday. They just announced it was in the works. I highly doubt that it would be released this holiday. When there's no more people that actually own a PS5 than they do because of the lack of stock. I don't know where you heard that from, Master Millions, but I highly doubt it. All they did was announce that they were working on it and that they'd improved the whole thing and that it had been cut down to one cable and that dev kits had been sent out. They only announced like a few weeks ago that dev kits are being sent out. There's no way in the world they would release it this year because the dev kits just went out. So anything that released this year would be a game that had been in development for less than a year. What movie had the craziest twist that you weren't expecting? Off the top of my head, the first thing that comes to mind is the ending of The Mist, because that's not how the novella ended. So it took me completely by surprise when he shot his entire family to death and then, well, Seventh, I've been interested in getting into writing fiction. Any tips? Oh, don't get me started there, Smith. I appreciate someone coming to me for advice on those kind of things. But we have a regular 7thCast viewer who at one point was like every day was asking me another question about writing and was sending, I can't remember who it was, and because their screen names between Twitter and the 7thCast didn't match, and it was getting to where I was spending a lot of time that I needed to be working on actual work stuff, replying to his questions about writing fiction. And I felt bad, but I had to stop replying to him because it was just taking up too much of my time to answer all of his questions. I felt bad, but, I pointed him in the right direction. I was like, you need to buy this book, you need to buy this book, read them cover to cover, and start following what they say. Take an English grammar course. Learn how to construct a paragraph, learn how quotations work. Learn how first person's perspective, omniscient perspective, third person perspective works. Learn how those things work before you start trying to write fiction. You can have the greatest idea in the world, and you can have great ideas for the characters, their motivations, their personalities, but if you don't know how to properly put it down on paper, it's not going to do you any good. Because it's just going to read like, fan fiction written by a 13-year-old. You have to know your grammar. You have to know your structure. And then even after you learn the grammar, you have to learn about how to construct fiction. How to handle subtext and how to handle plotting and all that kind of thing. And which I'm not going to get into great detail here. But there's a lot that goes into it other than just having a good idea for a story. There's a science and an art to writing. And you've got to at least have the basics down before you can start actually putting fiction down on paper. So we're almost out of time. We got like another minute left. Do you like Prisoners movie? Haven't watched it. Seventh, when will Sony put PS5 in stores where you can buy them instead of buying them online? Who knows? As long as the chip shortage is still going on, we're going to have problems for anything new coming out. Whether it be Series X, graphics cards, the next Switch, whatever. Especially another PSVR. Da-da-da-da-da. All right, that's it. It's 9 o'clock. We had one $5 donation, which means we're $45 short of the 10 o'clock goal. That means this is time for me to say goodbye. I appreciate everybody that came by. I appreciate those who kept things going with good questions. I will be, of course, back next week, so please think about the things that you want me to talk about. If you have any suggestions for what primary topics that I open the show with should be, feel free to send them to me on Twitter. My Twitter is at the 7th level, all one word. So feel free to tweet me and let me know if there's a particular topic you'd like me to discuss before we go into Q&A. And in the meantime, I will see you all next week. Same 7th time, same 7th channel. Be sweet, y'all.